What's going on, everybody? This is the Crossover Move podcast, a collaboration between the Trophy Hunters podcast and the Four Wide podcast, and we're talking all things NASCAR tonight. I cannot promise that it's not going to get heated in here, so just know that we're all good, we're all friends, and we're not actually going to kill one another. Joining me on this episode, he is a co-host of mine over at Phantom Empire. He's also the host of Take One podcast and the co-host of the Four Wide podcast, Mr. Mike Fish. What's going on, dude?
Good, man. Glad to be here. Glad to finally get everybody on at once. Voice messages are always interesting over Facebook, but it's good to get, on screen and get this thing recorded, man. Glad to be here.
Also joining us, his co-host, Four Wide podcasts, Cody. What's going on, man?
What's going on, y'all? Super excited to get on with all four of us, man. I mean, I'm always down to talk NASCAR, so I know it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, we got a bunch of heated topics, if you will. I'm curious to hear everybody's take on it. And there's a bunch that you guys don't even know about, so we'll get to those at the end. Also joining me, he is the co-host of the Trophy Hunters podcast, fellow colleague racing, and it's Ryan. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Sean. Doing pretty good. I'm very excited. I've really loved our chat and talking NASCAR. I love talking NASCAR, so I've been itching to expand the horizons of our topics here. So really excited about tonight.
I'm going to throw it over to Mike and Cody first. The people at the Dinger Nation Facebook group, which Ryan and I co-run with a couple of other guys, probably don't know too much about your podcast. So maybe let people in on what you guys do and where they can find you.
You passing it over to me, Mike? Gotcha. Yeah, no, we run the Four Wide podcast. Me and Mike, number one, we've known each other for quite some time. We're actually brother-in-laws. So we've had podcasts together, and we've been talking for the longest time to actually get a NASCAR podcast going in. We finally said, let's go ahead and do it. I believe our first show was in August of this year. So, we're 11 episodes in on the Four Wide podcast, talk everything NASCAR. You can find us Monday nights at normally about 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we, like I said, just talk NASCAR, love it. Shows normally about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's just a good time.
That's awesome, man. I've listened to it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great listen. You guys have excellent graphics that you use too, and I'm a numbers guy, so is Ryan, and you guys love diving into the numbers. So whenever you guys
crunch those numbers,
I geek out hard. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, Ryan and I run a podcast called the Trophy Hunters podcast, where the first half of the episode is dedicated specifically to colleague race and Xfinity End Cup series, and then the back half of the episode we usually dive into just various NASCAR issues. And we're going to let Mike kick things off with our first topic of this evening. Dude, you have some issues with NASCAR's inconsistency.
Yeah, I feel like this is a topic that may get a little heated once we kind of dive into the details of this, but I feel like we can all agree with the words that are on the screen right now, and it's NASCAR and its inconsistency over time, really especially this year and the past couple of years, but I feel like it's really shown its head this year with the inconsistencies that it's shown each week, and I feel like it gets worse each week. And obviously the big incident that is on everybody's mind since that race Sunday is, the Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson situation. That was obviously not good to see, not good to happen. And, Bubba Wallace ended up getting one race suspension, no points deducted, no fines. Some people thought that was harsh. Some people thought that was too light. So, I guess I'm really interested to see, just kind of go through and kind of talk about, what everybody his feeling on that, Bubba incident. We can talk on that first, and then just that. I feel like I know that's going to lead into the inconsistencies of NASCAR just based off what we've talked about already. So, Sean, I'm going to kick it over to you, man. How do you feel about the whole Bubba Wallace situation, the penalty that was handed down to him? I would say his team, but his team's not suffering at all. It's just him. So, how do you feel, man?
So I didn't get to see the incident when it happened. I was busy working, and I had AJ's in-car cam up on my phone, and I was able to hear the radio. And I just hear his radio start to go nuts that something has happened. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm asking you guys what happened. And then like half an hour after the fact, I got to see the crash. And honestly, the way I see it, and you guys might view it differently, and I'm very curious to hear how each one of us views that incident. I viewed it as Bubba got mad that he got raced real hard, probably dirty. I think that's fair to say. And he chose to hook someone going 180 plus miles an hour at a 1.5-mile track in the right rear. It was actually, it's funny because we'll touch on the Kyle Petty thing, but it actually reminded me of a wreck that Kyle Petty caused. I don't know if it was the same track or not, but it was a pretty brutal wreck. So like to me, there was no need to retaliate like that, simply because he took himself out of the race too. Like the whole reason for the driver change in those cars is they're running for owners points, and they just shot themselves or he shot his team in the foot anyways by making that decision. So yeah, it wasn't a very wise decision. The stuff that happens afterwards, that happens a lot in NASCAR, the shoving match. And I'd be far more concerned with hooking someone intentionally and lying about it at 180 plus miles an hour than I would be, two grown men shoving each other in the infield. How do you take it, Cody? What's your read on the situation?
So I feel like this is put under a microscope because of the issues we've seen over the past, year with this new gen car. Obviously, we've seen all these concussions come out. The drivers don't necessarily feel safe in these cars. So to see somebody intentionally wreck somebody else that could have caused, harm to the other driver, yeah, I can understand the frustrations. And I mean, I do agree that wasn't necessary, and especially in the climate that we're in right now. But at the same time, you brought up the example of, he was raced hard, maybe kind of dirty because he was put into the wall and it kind of took him out of the race. But I guess the thing is, when you're driving in these cars, obviously I have zero experience being in any of these cars, but the drivers don't really necessarily know what happened on the track at that given time. So Bubba could have very well thought that maybe it was intentional on Kyle Larson's part, or he didn't like what Kyle did because it was still pretty early on in the race. So, again, you hate to see somebody intentionally wreck somebody else because of what's going on with this new gen car. But at the same time, I might be in the minority, but I somewhat understand where Bubba was coming from. You know what I'm saying? And I will say this, you brought up the owner's points. The thing is, this race, while it does matter, I guess, because, you want to finish the race, he was already out of the owner's points because he wasn't able to make it from the round of 8 cutoff. But I will say Kyle Larson was still in the owner's points to try to get that championship, and that messed his day up too. So I mean, it's a lot going on here. I somewhat understand where Bubba came from, but at the same time, with the safety of these cars, sucks to see that, man.
No, I have never driven a NASCAR in my life, but I did iRacing for almost a decade, and they police their system very, very closely. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, you get real pissed off and your emotions take over. Now, I can't hurt someone on iRacing, but I do remember someone wrecking me at Atlanta, and I ended up going a lap down, and I waited for that mother Canucker to come back around, and I took him out. And well, unfortunately for me, he had a capture card, showed the iRacing officials, and I got sat for 2 weeks. So that's in iRacing, people, not even NASCAR.
They're more consistent than NASCAR. That's kind of crazy.
They really are. They really are. iRacing has the hammer, man.
Oh, for sure. Ryan, what's your take on the situation, man? Where do you stand on what happened between Kyle Larson and Bubba Wallace?
Yeah, I've got pretty strong opinions on this one. I feel like um, I've watched a lot of racing. I've watched a lot of IndyCar. I've watched a lot of Formula One. I've watched a lot of NASCAR Xfinity. I've watched a lot of racing. I've watched a lot of cars wreck each other. And you know, when you watch a race and you see an accident, you know. And that was one of those instances where the second it happened, I immediately said, that's too far. He's crossed a line. That is an extremely dangerous move. Um, he hooked a driver in the dog leg at Las Vegas, which is one of the fastest mile and a halves on the circuit. It's well documented. They were upwards of 170, and he just right hooked him. And as he came across the track, as as bad as it sucks for Christopher Bell, I am thankful Christopher Bell was there, because Kyle Larson was able to, dissipate some energy by clipping Christopher Bell before he hit the wall, and it changed the angle. He hit driver's side, which is bad. But as we've seen with these cars, if you hit rear first, it could put you out. And he was on his way to hitting rear first at a very high rate of speed. So that to me was above and beyond any level of retaliation you could see in the sport. And and I also, the way he hit driver's side, pancake first against the wall. We haven't seen a lot of accidents like that in recent memory, thankfully. But I want to harken back to the early 2000s. Kenny Irwin hit the wall that way and he died. Adam Petty hit the wall that way and he died. Jerry Nadeau hit the wall that way, and he's had severe head trauma ever since, and he was never able to race again. So when I look at an accident like that, and I see just the intent was there. I know you made a comment that perhaps it ruined Bubba Wallace's day. These cars are fragile. You can break a toe link, by just blowing on it. But he hit that wall, he bounced off of it, and he had control of his car. His toe link wasn't broken. He could have kept going. His race wasn't over. And to be honest with you, he didn't give himself a chance to find out if his day was over. He just turned left straight into Kyle Larson and sent him around. So he ruined his own day. When he still had a car. He won stage one, Bubba Wallace. He was running top 5 at the moment of impact. Yes, that damaged his car, but he had a top 5 car. He had a winning car, and he threw it out the window in retaliation. So to me, Bubba was totally out of line. The 1 race suspension is warranted. I'm okay with the 1 race suspension. I know some people are saying 3. Kyle Petty was saying 3. 3, nah. 2, okay. We saw a situation a few years ago with Matt Kenseth getting 2. And you want to talk about we draw the line, right? NASCAR tends to draw the line on 2 things right now. The car, you can't screw with the car. If you screw with the car, you're going to get a severe fine, severe penalty, and your crew chiefs are going to get suspended. And you can't fuck with playoff drivers. And he fucked with 2 playoff drivers. He ruined Christopher Bell's day. He's ruined his season, basically, unless he can win a race. He's out of the playoffs. And as you mentioned earlier, Kyle Larson was in the owner's points. So 2 cars in the playoffs were negatively affected by his actions. So a suspension was warranted in my book. And I just want to say this as well. Las Vegas is the track where Dan Weldon was killed. He lost his life at Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a track that has taken a professional driver's life. You just can't mess with these situations, and I think the suspension was correct.
So I'm going to flip it over to Cody again here for a second. 1, do you think the suspension's correct? And 2, this is a guy whose teammate just had to retire from full-time competition because of a wreck in these cars. Again, in the heat of the moment, that might not be going through your mind, but at the same time, after it's got to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, no, I mean, in regards to the suspension, I think that he should have been given exactly what Matt Kenseth was given. When Matt Kenseth intentionally wrecked Joey Logano at Martinsville, running him directly into I think it was turn 3 wall, he got a 2-race suspension and 6 months probation. That's exactly what Bubba Wallace should have gotten, in my opinion. I feel like the only difference in the two was they were at a faster track at Las Vegas and Martinsville. But in regards to the kind of what's going on in the mind, I look at it like this. And again, this is not making any excuses for Bubba Wallace. I'm just looking at it as myself, right? We've all been in situations where something happens to us and without even thinking, we quickly retaliate, right? A lot of times it's the wrong decision, and agreed. I think this was the wrong decision by Bubba. But when you're kind of looking at the scope of things in regards to sports, right? Like you look at football, if something happens to you on the football field, you can go right back at the person the next play, right? Like in NASCAR, it's a little different. Like there's not much you can do in regards to getting the car back. I understand like kind of what Hamlin did to Chastain at Pocono, right? Like just ran him up high a little bit, sort of like a little payback there. But at a bang bang play, like what happened with Bubba Wallace, I think he just wasn't thinking, and he took Larson out. And I do believe that if he could replay everything, he wouldn't do that because of exactly what you said. A teammate of his immediately, basically had to retire because of concussions and, injuries that he sustained from this new car. I really do think Bubba would redo this, but you can't rewind time, man.
Yeah, and I just want to add this too, just to make the situation even worse in my mind for Bubba Wallace, is that NASCAR didn't have one, but they had two safety meetings with the drivers in the week leading up to Las Vegas. This is obviously a topic that's on everyone's mind. We haven't seen a season like this in a long time, where we've had Chris Buescher miss a race with injury, Kurt Busch has missed races injury, Alex Bowman's missed. This is rare territory, and this is something that they've been talking about, and they just had a drivers meeting about it. And what does he do? The first weekend out, loses his shit and sends Larson around. So it's just the optics are so bad here that I don't think you could look past it. And where's the line in the sand? Well, Steve O'Donnell and crew said this is it. You can't right rear somebody into a wall. You want to bump somebody under caution? All right, that's going to be points and a fine. But this is going to get you suspended. And to that point, sorry, just one quick thing. They should have taken points too. They should have taken points because, while this didn't directly affect, this wasn't 2311's fault, but, he represents the organization, and there should have been at a minimum a 50-point fine to the organization, considering they put Bubba Wallace in the 45 for the specific reason of ownership. And while they didn't advance to the round of 8, those points still matter because you're still racing for 5th. That team could theoretically still finish 5th in the owner's points, even though they've already been eliminated. So they should have taken a hit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to quickly say, with what you brought up about them having 2 safety meetings that week, Bubba, he should have, as they say, read the room, right? Like he should have read the room, understood what was going on. And again, I understand, and he was probably seeing red at the time, and it was a bang bang play, boom, that happened to him, so he immediately retaliated. But he just has to read the room better, man. It shouldn't have happened.
Mike, you're the one that brought the inconsistency topic to the table for today. So I got to ask, do you think the suspension is right or wrong? And Cody brought up the Matt Kenseth incident. That's at Martinsville, a far less dangerous track in a far less dangerous car.
Yeah, to me, if you're doing that, you're just picking and choosing how you want to punish people. I think if you're going to intentionally wreck somebody, no matter what the situation is, it should be consistent across the board. And my problem with this is I agree with pretty much what everybody said, that Bubba is in the wrong for reacting the way that he did. I don't think there's any excuse about it. Did he get pushed up into the wall? I think so. I don't think it was dirty. I just thought, me personally, I thought Kyle was pushing his car to the limits, and he pulled a Ross Chastain and chose not to let up. Same with Bubba. Bubba had the chance. Was he going to let up? Neither of them let up. And it just happened the way that it happened. And Bubba was totally in the wrong for, you just can't right hook somebody. I mean, you've always heard, no matter what, even way before these cars, that is a rule. You just don't hook somebody into the wall like that. No matter where you're at, no matter what you're driving, none of that. for NASCAR and its consistency thing to me, to the Matt Kenseth thing, like I understand, like I just feel like NASCAR is just like, again, I heard it today that people are picking I feel like NASCAR is just picking and choosing who they want to punish, and two, how they want to punish them. Like, if it should be a rule, if you intentionally wreck somebody, no matter if you're at Daytona, Richmond, Martinsville, it doesn't matter. If you intentionally wreck somebody, you're putting somebody in the wall, you're putting somebody in danger, no matter what happens. And we've seen with these cars, whether you're at Martinsville or Vegas, it seems like the lighter the car hits the wall, the easier these drivers get injured, which is very weird to me, by the way. So I just think it needs to be consistent across the board. You intentionally wreck somebody, it's a 1-race suspension. It's a 2-race suspension. I was watching a YouTube video today about, what drivers, past drivers like Cal Petty and Dale Jr. were talking about. Cal Petty said he thought that Bubba should have been parked for the rest of the year, which I thought was ridiculous. But Kyle Petty is known for making statements like that, not just with Bubba, but with anybody. He's like one of the guys that wants to stand out in the media in the week, and just whatever he says crazy, he just hopes that it sticks to the wall so he can be talked about. And then Dale Jr. said, and I respect Dale Jr. a lot, and he said that if it's based on NASCAR and what they do as far as intentionally wrecking people, outside of really Matt Kenseth, Bubba shouldn't have been suspended. And Junior brought up 2 incidences in the truck series this year where 2 drivers, I'm sorry, I forgot their names.
Carson Hocevar.
Yeah, there was somebody else too that literally just right hooked somebody into the wall too. Granted, you're in the trucks, you're not going as fast. Obviously the concerns as far as that we have with these next gen cars aren't as big as what they are in the truck series. But that, to me, that just goes back to consistency. We can't pick and choose, in my opinion. If I'm in the truck series and I choose to wreck somebody, I know that I'm going to be good because I'm not worried about the car safety or anything like that. But you know what I mean? It's just not consistent across the board. I just think there's so many loopholes, and I feel like NASCAR is just, again, picking and choosing what they want to do, how they want to do it. Me personally, I would have liked to see Bubba suspended 1 race and dock points and fined. Like, that would have been what I would have done. But if you go by what NASCAR has been doing all year for intentionally wrecking drivers, he technically shouldn't have been suspended. But again, I don't think that's the right call. But if NASCAR wants to stay consistent, that's what they want to do. But I felt like NASCAR was like scrolling through social media and seeing like, oh, he has to be suspended. He has to be suspended, which I think he should have. But they were like, okay, we gotta earn the general public's respect back. We gotta suspend him for a race, which is the wrong thing to do. I just felt like that's what they're doing, and that's what they have been doing.
Well, I look at it this way. In the lower series in particular, I think there's a little bit more leeway. Right, wrong, or indifferent. We saw Noah Gragson cause a big pileup of Road America, wrecked a lot of race cars, cost a lot of money to a lot of owners. We obviously saw Carson Hocevar right hook somebody. I think it was a Gateway. So again, both of those tracks are not nearly as fast as Las Vegas. But when you look at the remedial series, these drivers, for all intents and purposes, are still learning the ropes a little bit. So I think NASCAR has a little bit more tolerance for mistakes. We saw Ty Gibbs make some mistakes. We've seen some mistakes by a bunch of truck series drivers in the past. Ben Rhodes should have been suspended a few years ago for right hooking. I can't remember who it was. It was one of the KBM trucks, but that was egregious. That should have been a suspension. But we've seen Johnny Sauter get suspended. We've seen Kyle Busch get suspended in those lower series. So you're right. I mean, it just goes to, what I've just said is all inconsistent. But I do think there's a little bit more leeway when you're talking about a truck driver.
I just again, like, why? I just don't understand the picking of and choosing of, and it's not just with this incident. Like, Cody brought up a point the other day. We were talking about, like, what race was it at Cody where tires was just a huge issue? And
what are you talking about in the playoffs this year?
Yeah.
Was it Bristol?
So it was Bristol, and it felt like they would throw flags for playoff drivers that would blow cars, but would not throw flags for non-playoff drivers. It's just, again, it's totally a different topic, but it's still this main topic that we're talking about, just the inconsistency across the board with NASCAR. And, you know, it was alluded to earlier in this podcast, like, you don't fuck with playoff drivers. Well, the other drivers matter too. And I understand the playoff drivers right now are most important, but I just feel like even on the NASCAR side, like, they're picking and choosing, and I just personally don't like that. I think it should be clear cut. You intentionally wreck somebody, no matter where you're at, you're suspended a race. Like, it should be a clear no tolerance policy if safety is a big concern for NASCAR, in my opinion, which it should be. I just want a clear cut like rule. I don't want these loopholes where NASCAR can like pick and choose. I just think it should be clear cut for everybody.
So I agree with most of what you said about Kyle Petty there, but I did think Kyle Petty had an interesting point, and he went about it the wrong way. Is the suspension, the 4 race suspension for crew chiefs for the loose tire on cars that are all clearly having this issue. I don't know if that means that Bubba should have been suspended 4 races. I think it means that the tire suspension is kind of ridiculous and needs to
That
be.
man said a whole year. I just watched that part. I'm not lying. He said a whole year, but it's not a Bubba thing. It's just a Kyle Petty thing. That's the stuff that he says. It's not, it's not just a one situation thing. But I agree with you, and that is a good point. I don't know if I agree with the whole tire thing as well for 4 races. I think that's rather egregious.
Well, I think they need to go the other way. Kyle Petty was like, well, when you look at the optics, sure, 4 race suspension for a crew chief for a loose wheel versus a 1 race suspension for a right. Yeah, that line up, right? That doesn't jive. But instead of like over reacting to the plus side, they really need to correct the tire rule. And while that is a safety concern, I mean, tires are heavy, man. They come off a car and they hit a spectator, a crew member, an official. You could severely injure or kill somebody with a rogue tire. So, I mean, it is a suspension worthy event, but I feel like that should be probably 2 races versus 4. And then now you're looking at a more even suspension list when you compare the two.
Yeah, I just think NASCAR, and we've been talking about it in our group chat for a little bit, has been and probably will continue to be inconsistent on basically every level. Like, I can't see that changing. It's never really changed. I mean, they can't even cover the races without bias, and
I
Ryan and I talk about that on a weekly basis.
I
And like,
Well,
I strongly encourage any fan. Sorry, Mike. I strongly
no,
encourage
you're
any
good.
fan out there. If you're a fan of any driver in any team, and you want to actually know what's going on with that team in the middle of the race, pay for the scanner. You will not regret it. Have the scanner. You now have. I believe the in-car cam is going to be all next year too.
it will
Uh,
be, yep.
it's two of the most dynamic ways that you can view the race, and then have the race on too. If you have that ability, but like to get up to the date, up to the minute updates on your driver, that's the best way to do it. You also see the lap averages. You can also track how far ahead the car is in front of them and how far the car behind them is. You don't get better information than that. And NASCAR broadcasts, doesn't matter if it's with a smaller team or a bigger team, will skew that information intentionally all the time. And it drives me nuts. So, like, to me, NASCAR is inconsistent on just about any and every level. You guys have anything further you want to add on the
Ooh.
inconsistencies?
Yeah, well, one thing I do want to add, I can't remember who I was listening to today, but it was somebody who raced back in the early 2000s, and they were talking about, yeah, while crazy things did happen in the early 2000s, like, they knew as soon as they got out of their car, they were going to the hauler and dealing with Mike Helton face to face. And there seems to be no Mike Helton, or like drivers can do just really whatever they want to, and then just wait a week or even 2 in some cases, and not get, have to, get their final say in whatever their penalty is, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I thought that was a good point, because when it comes to NASCAR presidents in the past, Mike Helton's name has always stuck out to me, because I've heard stories about, I've heard hauler stories. I've heard Mike Helton on multiple occasions talking about when drivers make dumb decisions like this. Kevin Harvick said that he's made plenty of dumb decisions like this, that he knew as soon as he got out of the car, no matter whether he was heated, whether he was in the right or the wrong, he knew he was going to the hauler and dealing with Mike Helton face to face. And he just feels like there is no Mike Helton in NASCAR right now.
Yeah, Mike Helton will put the fear of God in you, and you're right. Yeah,
Those were the words. Those were the words. The exact words. Fear
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, because and you're right. In years past, she's like, all right, 16s go into the NASCAR official after the race, and they don't really do probation much either. So they've definitely loosened a little bit the way they handle their business. And Steve O'Donnell and Steve Phelps are obviously different men, and they're running the sport in a more modern way. But with the hands-off approach, this has allowed the drivers to be more aggressive. Now, I don't want to completely curtail the drivers either, because the drivers on social media this season in particular have been the most outspoken they've been in a long time, and I feel like Steve Phelps and O'Donnell have allowed that environment to take place where the drivers are comfortable speaking their minds, and I don't want that to change, because the one thing we've said for years is corporate speak. The drivers are bland, they're vanilla. We want to see the drivers, and now we've really seen, especially a Denny Hamlin and a Kevin Harvick, speak their minds. Now they had to officiate this one, but I really, it's so you have the good and the bad with the way they're officiating the races these days.
Last question on this topic. I just got to ask you guys. They had to suspend him or do something, in my opinion. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on it. I don't think there's a way they could have done nothing, because then you're telling the field it's open season for the next 3 races. And that's a bad message to send, because you already ruined one playoff driver's hopes more than likely. And then Larson's team was affected too. Like, we know I was listening to you guys talk about it on your podcast. Chastain payback is coming. Make no mistake about it. Someone is getting that guy in the next few races. But like, if it's open season, someone's going to get hurt. And it's funny that it's not funny, but Mike Helton comes up. The lasting image I have of him is at Dale Sr.'s press conference.
Yeah, same
when he
here.
announces his death.
Yep,
I was
same.
a teenager at the time. It's like, you're not careful, and you get someone hooking someone in the corner of Homestead. That's all. That's possible.
And let me ask you this: that if that Ross Chastain incident is coming, it's gonna be intentional. Do you suspend somebody who does it intentional if they don't right hook them? It's still an intentional wreck. That car can go anywhere you want to. Or are you only going to suspend him because he right hooked them into the wall? Or are we not holding drivers accountable for intentionally wrecking other drivers? Now I feel like, again, you're nitpicking and choosing how you want to, suspend these drivers. But
I agree. It opens a can of worms, but if you want my opinion, I think they're setting the line in the sand that says you can't right hook a driver. That's where they're going to draw the line. If you want to bump somebody under caution, the way Byron did the Hamlin, or if you want to maybe even bumper somebody going in pit lane after the race, that's going to cost you some money. It's going to cost you some points, but it's not going to cost you a suspension. And you know what? If that's how they want to officiate it, I'm actually okay with that. I don't want to see the driver suspended over every single situation, because I said this in our chat earlier that it sucks when a crew chief and members get suspended for 4 weeks, but they're not missed. They're not the show. Bubba Wallace not being in the race this weekend, that's a big deal. Like, there's a huge fan base that's not going to be happy that their driver's not in the field. So I don't want to get into the habit of suspending drivers every other week over incidents like this, where the rule book says you can fine and points, and I'm okay with that in certain instances. And where do we draw the line in a situation where Ross Chastain clearly has some payback coming? He's earned it, and I don't think you can cut the legs out from under the drivers that deserve to get their payback when and where. So fine line, but I think as long as the drivers tow it correctly, it'll be okay.
If they do what Denny Hamlin did, ran him into the wall and gave Ross a choice, I think that think they'd be okay with that. But
it's perfect.
I am curious to see how the payback comes, because Mike makes a decent point there. Like, they could end up suspending someone over this, and if someone gets suspended over it, you're gonna have half that field up in arms going, this guy did it like 7 times this season and got nothing, but we do it once and are gonna get something now. Go ahead, Cody.
I was just going to say real quick, it's like The line that's drawn, I still feel like it's kind of blurry though, right? So let's just say I'm just using a quick example. Let's just say it's the last lap of a race, right? And you're going into the final turn and somebody just throws a Hail Mary, right? Like it's like, all right, boom, I'm going in as fast as I can. I'm gonna hit their bumper, get them out the way. So what happens? They hit the bumper and the person just goes right into the wall. I mean, obviously, what the intent wasn't to hurt the driver, but at the same time, the driver could have gotten hurt. So that line that's being drawn, I still feel like it's blurry.
I think it's very blurry, and I think that we haven't seen the last of the drama. I'm sure NASCAR's hoping we have.
Huh,
I would bet a lot of money we have not.
not at all.
No, there's 3 races left in the season. It's only going to pick up.
Definitely.
Well, that brings us to our second topic, which I'm going to hand it over to Cody. Man, you wanted to talk about the NASCAR charter system.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly when it was placed. I want to say maybe a decade or so ago, but it got to a point where NASCAR said that in the Cup Series you can only have 4 charters. You can have a 5th, but that can only be on a part-time basis. So I just kind of wanted to talk to y'all about this and get y'all's opinion on it. Do you feel like NASCAR should change the charter system up, allow these teams to have as many charters as they want and have as many full-time drivers as they want? I'll kick that to Mike.
Kick to somebody else. Sorry.
Wow.
I gotta take care of something.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, so no, I hate this idea. I'm someone who is so tired of watching racing every weekend, and the only teams they talk about are the 3 big teams for the most part. Stuart Haas gets some love in there too, but like we're in a day and age where Trackhouse can come in, Colleague can come in, Roush Fenway Keselowski has been a lot better in the back half of the season. Uh, we're at a point where the sport is more attractive to get into, and it has not been that way in 20 friggin' years. And if Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs and Penske and Stuart Haas can go run 7 cars out there apiece, you're going to kill the interest of anybody else coming into this sport and bringing more money into the sport, which I love the charter system. I'm not saying it's perfect. I think there's definitely some tweaks needed. Like eventually you might have so much interest where 36 is not enough, which would be great for NASCAR to get to that point. But I don't want to see any more than 4 per team. Hell, I wouldn't be against them going down to 3 per team. But that doesn't mean that they can't run a 4th car. Like the teams that only have 2 charters, for example, they can run a 3rd car full time, but it's not at the same value as the other cars, and they got to qualify their way in. And there's a bunch of other stuff that goes with that. I would like to see it either stay where it is or get reduced. I don't want to see it expand anymore. I like the new blood in the sport.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If you asked me this question last year, I might have a different opinion because um, when you look at other series, the best teams have the most cars. I mean, in IndyCar, Andretti Autosport has 6 cars. You want to field competitive cars. I mean, while I respect what Spire does, what Rick Ware does, I would rather
Liar.
see a few more. All right, yeah, Cody Ware is not so good, but I would rather see a 5th Hendrick car versus a 4th Rick Ware car. So I definitely think in years past I would have a different opinion on that. But Sean hit the nail on the head here that this year in particular with the new car, as even as the playing field has become, I think it's better for the sport that now you're getting some teams, and Junior Motorsports wants to join. So I know they've been, dangling that carrot for years, but I think it'll eventually happen.
They're gonna
But
wait
now,
till NASCAR hands them one when they script one of these teams from one.
no kidding. Rick Ware, speaking of Rick Ware, they are on razor thin ice on a couple of their charters. So, but I love what Trackhouse has done. I love what Colling's done. And now, Sean, the other thing to keep in mind here is they don't have 36 charters. It's 30, or maybe it's 32. But there are open cars at the back end of this field that don't have charters. So maybe the better question is, should there be more charters? And maybe if there's enough interest in the sport that it gets to a point where we should have 36 charters and 40 cars in a field, okay, maybe we can have that conversation, but you don't want to dilute the value of the charters either. So, and Connor in the chat is absolutely right. They've gone to 4 charters because Roush Fenway had 5. They had all 5 cars in the playoffs, 2008 or 2010 or whatever it was. So they're the reason we have the charter system as it is, or the restriction to 4 per team. But in the end, I think 4 is the right number. Because truthfully, if you even look at the teams, the 4th car usually doesn't run well. It's you 3 good cars, and then a 4th is out there in a clown car. So I don't think they should have more than that.
So I just checked. And yeah, no, there's 36 charters. There's 36 paid charters in the Cup Series. So I don't know if that expanded from last year or not, but and I have the list up right now. I'd have to count them one by one. But Mike, over to you on the charter thing. Would you like to see it? By the way, though, quickly, I agree. Get Rick Ware out of here. Get Spire out of here. What's the other team? Who's the 78? Isn't the 78?
That's the one I was trying to think of too. I cannot think of who it is.
I can picture him. He's the bigger burly dude.
No, it's McLeod, right?
BJ McLeod Motorsports.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
Get him out of there too. I'm not saying give them to Hendrick or whatever, but Penske has room to add one. Colleague we know wants to add one. Trackhouse wants to add one. Junior Motorsports, if they can get up there eventually at a much cheaper charter rate than they are now, they're going to take the jump, and God knows NASCAR is just waiting to be able to help them. And I truly do believe that. But Mike, where are you with the charters, man?
Well, I mean, Junior's been, especially here lately, been openly speaking about it. It's hard to do right now with the price of the charters. So I know that is a big factor right now. I know for him, and I guess really anybody else that really wants to join. But I'm kind of with Sean on this as well. I have really enjoyed seeing multiple cars run up front this year. I think it's made the sport really, really exciting. And a lot of that obviously has to do with this new gen car and really the unknown. But I feel like this unknown has run throughout this entire season. So I would say just keep it as it is, I don't see a reason to change it. Now, no, Cody, this was your topic, man. So I'm definitely interested to see how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think I'm just tired of the drivers that we know that are going to finish like 27th through 36th, right?
Like, and that slam in the back of people at road courses.
I mean, I'm just tired of that. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand maybe NASCAR needs to get a little more strict on the parameters around owning a charter and how successful those charters need to be year in and year out. But I mean, I'm obviously in the minority here because I would like to see them allow these, Hendricks, Joe Gibbs, all these to be able to maybe field another car or two, just because I want to see the competition at an all-time high. Now, I understand, I guess there's 2 different levels to competition when you're talking NASCAR. You have race team competition, and you have driver competition. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the race teams who are able to put together, like the Hendricks, the Joe Gibbs, the Penske's. We know those are going to be the drivers that are up front week in and week out. But I guess I would rather see 5 Hendrick cars, 5 Penske cars, and 5 Joe Gibbs cars at the front every week instead of and knowing that the guy that finishes 30th still had a somewhat of a chance to win, instead of having these 27 through 36 just being basically, what did they used to call them? Starting parks, basically. I guess that's where I'm at now. Obviously, if you can get other people involved in NASCAR, like y'all keep bringing up Junior Motorsports, we know it's coming. Like if it's not going to be next year, it's probably going to be 2024. And again, colleague racing, right? Like they come in and boom, like they're hitting it on all cylinders right now. But the thing is, how many times have we somewhat seen that? How many times have we seen somewhat of a new racing organization be able to get into NASCAR, bringing in maybe just one charter, or even before the charters really came, they come in and they're still not able to do anything? I guess again, I think NASCAR just needs to get a little more strict on the ins and outs of the charters and how successful they are year in and year out, and basically put it like, if you're not good in a 2-year span, time to move on, bring somebody else in until they can find that consistency.
I'd like to see teams like RCR, Colleague, Roush Fenway, Trackhouse, teams that are in of that echelon, and I do think they're all pretty close. Continue to add and continue to invest money into their teams. You have a car now like you didn't have before when Start and Park was going on. You have a car where Michael Jordan can come in, buy a team. Obviously, he's aligned with Joe Gibbs, so that certainly helps. But to a lesser extent, look at Trackhouse. Yeah, they are essentially Chip Ganassi racing, so they already had a great system in place, but it's still a new car. Colleague Racing, Justin Haley in the last 8 races. Ryan and I just talked about this. 2 drivers in the entire Cup Series have been better than him over the last 8 races. That's nuts and never would have happened 5 years ago. Now you're giving teams reason to be like, oh, hey, yeah, maybe I want to get involved in this. Maybe I want to, buy a charter and get into the NASCAR series. And it's more attractive to sponsors too when it's an even playing field or close to an even playing field. You're still going to have Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Penske investing money into any part of development they possibly can to get an edge up. But the problem is you've run out of charters. You got Rick Ware taking up spots. You got BJ McLeod and Spire. They're all taking up spots when those spots could be going elsewhere. Like, what was the latest rumored charter price? North
20
of
million
$20
plus.
million now, Dale Jr. said. And last year, Colleague paid $20 million to get 2. You got to do something about the price gouging there to try to get some other guys involved, or you need to enforce the rules that you put in place. And I could be wrong. If they were doing that, Rick Ware should already be under the microscope.
Oh
They
yeah,
are. The
100%.
15
I mean,
car. Yeah, that's in trouble.
man, could you imagine just Trackhouse adding another team, Colleague adding another team, Junior bringing in a car? I mean, you're talking about really, really good, solid competition. And to Cody's point, where you can expect the back half of the field to be competing. You know what I mean? So yeah, that would be really, really interesting. I would love to see that.
Now,
Race.
would you let me ask this question real quick? Would you say that, like the 2311, right? They come in now, they're at 2 cars. We all know that they're aligned with Joe Gibbs Racing. If when Junior Motorsports comes, he's going to be aligned with Hendrick Motorsports. Would you say that's these big racing organizations' way of getting more charters somewhat? I know that they're not getting the full, scope of the money coming into them, but they're getting broke off some sort of money just being aligned with them.
I was going to say exactly that's the way around the charter restrictions is, yes, 2311 is their own brand. They're their own team. Their self-interest is not aligned with Joe Gibbs Racing. But for all intents and purposes, it's 2 additional Joe Gibbs cars. Yes, they have to pay for that. But Denny Hamlin drives for Joe Gibbs, right? So, I mean, let's not close our eyes here, and we know what's happening, that is a Joe Gibbs car. And even if you look at the Xfinity series, yes, the brand is Junior Motorsports, but those are Hendrick cars. They have always been Hendrick cars. It's just under the Junior banner. So that's the disguise, if you want to say that, around the restriction. And you made a comment, Sean, about the charter prices. The charter prices are good. The higher they are, the better. We want those prices of the charters to continue to go up, and I'll touch on that in our segment down the road. But the more value that these charters have, the more these teams can actually go to their partners and be like, "Hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish." And as their values go up, there's a reason Penske only has 3 cars. I don't think they wouldn't want to run 4 cars, but their fund dictates that they're going to run 3. So, while they have that option, there are other things in place that keep certain teams at the numbers that they're at. So going forward, if Win Junior comes in, you're about to see 600 cars right there. We already have 6 Joe Gibbs racing cars. So and listen, I just want to talk about the back markers. Every racing series on the planet has back markers. They serve a purpose. They need to be there. You're not going to have 36 competitive cars. You just won't. So they're there. They're there for very different reasons. They're not there to win, but they do provide a very vital role in the sport. So while I don't necessarily, we were giving Rick Ware a lot of shit. He's there every week, cars out there to the best of his ability, and he's there because he wants to be there. And as long as he wants to be there and he's ponying up the money to be there, I'm okay with him being there.
Let's be real though. He's making money. He's not losing money. Teams like that are in it because they're making money. They're getting sponsorship in. And like there's a game of chicken going on. I'm going to disagree with you here strongly, actually. You take away the 3 teams that we just mentioned, and every one of those frigging cars have been competitive. You have the 34 and the 38 running top 10 on 1.5-mile tracks at times. You take away those 3 teams we just mentioned, who are almost never involved in it. Everybody else has a shot, maybe not at winning the race, but running in the top 10, running in the top 15, accumulating points. Michael McDowell barely missed the playoffs this year. So I do think they have the ability to have the first ever super competitive NASCAR field. I'm not saying Rick Ware can't bring a couple cars to the racetrack. I'm just saying if there's only going to be 36 charters, he shouldn't have them. And you have a game of chicken going on because you have let's use Trackhouse because we know they want to add one. They have money. Matt Colleague has money, but they're not going to spend north of $20 million. Same with Junior Motorsports on teams that are supposed to be on the hot seat for losing their charters based on what the rules say. So is NASCAR actually going to enforce that? And if they do, how do they go about doing that? Can they be like, okay, well, we're just going to take it away and you get nothing? I highly doubt it. They're going to have to get something for it. And I think they were hoping that the system was going to prevent this from happening. And not only is it happening, it's happening with 3 different teams. And you got this logjam of teams that are trying to buy charters. And then what happens?
Well, it's amazing. It's an amazing time because we have that many competitive cars. It's we were talking about this at the top of this segment that this time last year you didn't have 25 competitive cars, you had 12. So we've expanded on the competitiveness and the youth of the sport, Trackhouse racing, Colleague racing, 2311. We haven't seen that much movement from an ownership perspective in 30 years. The sport got very stagnant there for a while with Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Penske, and that group. So it's a great thing where we are with these younger owners coming into the sport, and we're at a point where there's more teams trying to buy charters and get into the sport than there ever has been. But you can't take that for granted. At some point, the economics are going to change, time's going to change. You might even see an older team fade out. I mean, Roush Fenway was probably going to disappear had Keselowski not bought in. So you're going to see the ebbs and flows of that going forward. So as awesome as it would be to have 36 cars competitive, it's not realistic.
And that team right there has really come on strong towards the end of the year. I mean, let's be honest. Keselowski was trash that first half of the year, and then here at the end, he's been up there competing for races. I mean, I think about Bristol, I believe, is when he blew the tire leading the race.
No caution.
Of course, non-playoff driver. But anyway, but Chris Buescher goes on to win that race, and Chris Buescher is another car that's really been catching on and catching fire. So that team's catching on and catching fire as well. I think about these other teams. I think Sean, you mentioned this, where I don't know, somebody mentioned it, and like there's always like at least 3 drivers or 3 cars a part of teams that are always running up there. And for me, I always think about Stuart Haas. And I know this guy's been under fire recently, but Cole Custer, I mean, that guy's never really up front. But like I feel like Kevin Harvick has caught fire. Eric Almirola is always usually up there, at least competing. And we see what's going on with Chase Briscoe. It's just always that one car on a team that kind of falls back. So
Alex Bowman.
Hold the Bowman
Speaking
thing.
of
We'll get to
Bowman,
that later.
dude,
Hold Bowman thoughts just for a little bit. It's literally a little later in the show.
All right.
We have where is it here? Giving people a preview of our there. See, Bowman's coming up.
all right. Well,
guys brought
I
up
got a hot topic
Fenway,
on Bowman. So
did you guys hear the news that came out about Roush Fenway Keselowski over the last 2 weeks? It came out very quietly and then just sort of disappeared, and I didn't see it blow up anywhere. And the news was Dodge was trying to get back into the sport, and it turned out that's the team they were negotiating with, and it would have seen Roush Fenway Keselowski and Front Row Motorsports go to Dodge. My question is, are they really out of negotiations, or was this Dodge's way of saying, okay, no, we're saying we're out. Let's negotiate a little further here on costs. I kept wondering, well, how they get in? How do they get in?
Yeah.
That's not a bad way to get in with a new car and to pull those 4 cars in.
I would love for Dodge to come back, man.
Yeah, I don't know why they would be out either.
Nah,
I mean,
well,
I would still do that. I still think they're the negotiating table, but I'm with Cody. I would love to see them come back. When I think of Dodge, the first cars that come to my mind is the 9 and 19.
yeah, yep. When they came back with Evernham the first time, I agree.
Yeah.
But I'll say the reason I think it's done. I think they're not coming, and the reason I say that is it's the world of cars in general and where we're going with high horsepower supercars, sports cars. The Challenger and the Charger are both getting discontinued.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys knew that or
Horrible
not.
move by Dodge.
It's a horrible move. That's the only thing they're known for is their sports cars, and they're getting rid of them. So when you look at, they're getting rid of their V8 cars. So NASCAR is still, for better or worse, a V8 series. And if you don't have a car that pumps out a V8, you can't be a NASCAR. So I think they're kind of at that weird point that, I know NASCAR, the reason NASCAR reduced the horsepower this year and years past is they're trying to accommodate a company like Acura or Nissan to come in and be a manufacturer, and that's not working out, but that's where the future of the sport's going. So I think Dodge is toast.
I mean, Honda's been rumored for years and it's never happened. Honda was in rumors for damn near a decade and nothing ever got done with it. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Cody, do you have anything else you want to bring up in terms of the charter system, man, before we move on?
No, that was it.
I just want to make a quick Connor made a comment in the chat that the Camry doesn't come with a V8. And you're right, Connor. It doesn't have to be in the specific car that's in the series. It just Toyota has a V8 with the Toyota Tundra, and that's why they're allowed to be in the sport.
Interesting. I didn't know that detail. So won't spend too much time on my topic, but I am curious to hear you guys' take. So the schedule. I am very in favor of the direction of the schedule of the last couple years. I'm
sure you are.
Okay, so let's clear up the fact that I'm an AJ Allmendinger fan. So, although Mike's a Chase Elliott fan, and he's right up there with coaches too, and Cody's a Kyle Larson fan.
I know.
So we all should be pro road course on this panel. But seriously though, they designed a car that is not identical, but very similar to the V8 supercars. Very, very similar. These cars are meant for road racing. They designed it to be able to have better road racing. So even though there's 6 road courses in the Cup schedule, I'm going to say that's still not enough. I think they're close to the number, but the reason why I don't think it's enough is outside of Daytona and Talladega, and I think Kyle Busch said this too. It might have been Kurt. I don't remember which one it was. There is I guess Bristol now, because technically their 2 races are different. There's no reason to go back to the same place twice anymore. Let's get a variety of tracks in there, even if it's not road courses. I'd like to see them add a couple more. I love the street course idea. We'll see how it actually plays out. But there's other short tracks. North Wilkesboro is going to have the All-Star race, but what if that goes very well? Why can't that be on the table to go back to in an actual points race? There's a bunch of other tracks all across North America, whether they're ovals or whether they're road courses that you could be going to. Did they go to Pocono twice this year?
No, that got
no. They cut it down to 1. Fuck
that track. I can't stand watching that track twice a year. But there's not enough variety. I don't want to see the same track twice in a year. I'm sure season ticket holders love it, getting to see their track twice a year. So that helps. But I do think in terms of if we're going the sports car route, if we want more variety in the schedule, other than Daytona and Talladega to hit your 4 super speedway quota, I'd like to see more variety,
And I
whether
know
it's road courses or not.
there's a couple tracks that I would love for them to go to at least twice a year, and this is now considered one of the first ones that comes to mind that I really love is Atlanta. Like, I love Atlanta. I'm really intrigued to see what this night race at Atlanta is going to be like. I can just imagine fireworks. But I love Atlanta, so there's a couple of tracks that I would love for them to go, and there's tracks that I think should be, a track should lose a race. I'm glad Texas lost a race. No offense to people who are down there, but that race is just boring to me. Let's see, Richmond. I'm sorry, you got it.
Sucks.
Okay. Let me tell you this. It's the only thing we got here in Virginia, okay, is the NASCAR races. And I enjoy going to both races because it's free food, free alcohol, and it's just a good environment, and it's good
Free
racing.
alcohol?
Yeah, I get through my work. We got a suite.
Oh, I was gonna say what? What
I was
kind
gonna
of
say
But,
we are road tripping to Richmond if they have free alcohol.
if y'all want to come, I can get you tickets. But no, seriously though, like, in all seriousness, that race is kind of boring to me. But I do find races like Richmond that are boring to a lot of people. Like, obviously, it's a lot of green flag racing at Richmond, right? But when that happens, like, strategy really comes into a play, and I feel like not a lot of strategy gets played throughout the year, in my opinion, especially when it comes to tracks like Richmond, because you already know you're going to get those green flag runs. So, like, I love like having teams to think like that. Now, should they have 2 races? Selfishly, yes, but I understand where you're coming from, Sean. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing a couple more road courses in there, or just more tracks that are different in there anyways. Like, I have no reason to think that North Wilkesboro is not going to run good. I mean, they're going back to the Coliseum in LA. I just think at North Wilkesboro is going to be better than that. Now, they got a lot to do to accommodate the fans. I don't know what's going on down there, how they're going to do that. They got to add some stands and stuff like that. But if they can do that, I'm all for going down there on a permanent basis, not just for the All-Star race. But I pretty much agree with what you said, man. I wouldn't mind some of the races losing a race.
It needs to happen. It does. I don't want tracks with the exception of Darlington. I want Darlington to have 2. I want Martinsville to have 2. Bristol has 2 separate now because of the dirt. But yeah, there's no reason to have tracks that go to the same place twice. Hey, I live up in Boston. I went to New Hampshire. I miss being able to go to New Hampshire, but that's meh also when it comes to racing. But the
Bring
tracks that I want to
Rockingham.
see, Rockingham's great. I love Rock. North Wilkesboro, the Milwaukee Mile is going to be on the Truck Series next year. I'm really excited about that. South Boston, New Smyrna. I know those are more of your grassroots tracks, right? And they probably don't have the full infrastructure to house a cup race. But Steve Phelps made a comment not too long ago that 2024 they are shaking up the schedule in a big way. I heard I know it's just a rumor, but somebody said they're talking about 40 races instead of 36, which is insane.
Ain't no way.
They need to go the other way. It needs to be 32, not 36.
I heard that rumor, but I heard multiple races on the same weekend.
Right. I did too. And truthfully, we talked about Pocono, right? I'll take a Pocono double. Give me a Pocono 200 on Saturday and a Pocono 200 on Sunday. I'm down with that. And if they can double up some races that way, I'm cool with going that route. But I definitely want to see more tracks. I think they've got right around the right number for road courses. I'd love to see Mid-Ohio on the Cup schedule. I'm pretty upset that they took Road America off. And then the other one is Laguna Seca. That would be an epic road course out there in California. That's the one with the big dip and down and around that the Indy cars use. So I definitely think there's room for expansion in the series, and they really should only do the quote unquote majors twice.
Yeah, Hell no, I don't want to see Darlington twice a year. I can't stand that race at all. I know I'm in the minority there. I don't like it. They're so limited with what they can do there, and
Get out of
there's so many
here.
other tracks that they could go to that who brought up Rockingham? Was it Mike? Like, why the hell are we not at Rockingham anymore?
Yeah,
Like,
Cody brought it up one podcast, and I was like, hell yeah, dude.
Rockingham
I mean,
would be amazing alongside oh my god, I'm forgetting it already. Where they're doing the All-Star race.
North Wilkesboro.
North
North
Wilkesboro. Like, you add those two tracks to the schedule and you take out a Darlington and I don't know, some other track, and your schedule looks a lot better in my opinion.
so I look at it like this. You know, you started this saying that you feel like there's not enough road courses based off of the new design of the car. Um, I honestly feel like there's not enough short tracks in the series. I mean, if we're going to talk short tracks are anything under a mile, right? All we have is Richmond, Martinsville, and Bristol. That is it,
St. Louis.
right? You bring
St.
I
Louis
thought
is
St.
under a
Louis was
mile.
one. What you talking
They
about?
might be a mile. Gateway.
Yeah, I thought that was like very similar to Darlington.
I think
Nope.
it's
I think it's like
flat.
1 1/4.
It might be a mile.
Dover's a
and quarter.
mile.
It's
Like Dover's a mile, New Hampshire's a mile, but like everything under a mile is literally just that we run on the Cup Series is Martinsville, Bristol, and Richmond. And I feel like why not bring in Iowa Speedway? That's a 7/8 of a mile. Let's bring in North Wilkesboro, right? And listen, I can guarantee you this whole North Wilkesboro thing just absolutely blew up, right? Like nobody expected them to have the turnout that they did earlier this year. Nobody expected that turnout to then go to, hey, well, guess what? NASCAR is now going to host the All-Star race there in 2023. I can guarantee you North Wilkesboro is going to be a points-paying race in 2024, 1,000%. I feel like we need to bring more short tracks. And I know that they're changing Auto Club, which I think it's a dumb move. Auto Club is moving from a 2-mile track to, I think they're going to make it like a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile track. I hate that. I think, you know, we have Michigan and we have Auto Club. Those are the 2-mile tracks that have a lot of speed to it. But yeah, you brought up something, Ryan, talking about it being like, you know, grassroots. That's what NASCAR is. NASCAR is grassroots. We need to get back to that. That's why I bring up this whole short track tirade that I'm going on. It's when you think of NASCAR, you think of growing up and you're going to your local track. Your local track's normally going to be a short track, right? We need to bring more short tracks into this NASCAR Cup schedule. And if we're going to stay at 36 races, I feel like they should do something along the lines of they group it in a 6 race span, right? Like maybe we have 2 1/2s, a restrictor plate, a road course, and a short track. I think that was 6. I might be off. But you group it together because I know in the 2023 schedule, we're going to be going to, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to go to the Indy Road Course in August, and then you're going right back to Watkins Glen and back to back. Let's spread some of this stuff out, right? Like I would love to have a road course every 6th race. Like that would be amazing. But I kind of feel like they group it all together. Like what our first road course normally isn't until May, I believe, April or May. So
Coda's in March.
Coda is in March. You're right. I don't know. NASCAR can do so many creative things with this schedule that I'm really hoping 2024 is going to be true and they really do spice things up.
I was hoping it was going to be this year. It took them forever to get the schedule out. And I was like, oh, they're making some changes.
Yeah.
They're making some changes. Me personally, specifically when it comes to the schedule, switch some things up in the playoffs, please.
Yeah. Big time.
Please.
That's where I was going is like when you have this playoff system that comes down to one race, like I know there's contracts, I know Phoenix went through renovation, but you should never have the same last race on back-to-back years, let alone having it 3 years in a row. I know that late in the year, there's only so many places you can go to, but there's no reason why you have to go to the same place in back-to-back years. Let's switch it up. Let's get a variety. That way, when one team gets an edge up on the one track, guess what? It's a different final race the next year. I think it adds variety and honestly adds entertainment value, in my opinion, anyway.
I would have taken Vegas as the finale. Last week's race at Vegas was spectacular.
Definitely.
I'll take that as a finale anytime. And I agree with you. It needs to rotate. They are limited. And we didn't touch on it, but Texas is getting renovated too. They're tearing that down and they're rebuilding it into something. They haven't said
Just make it a
what.
parking lot.
I truly I don't want them to turn it into Atlanta. I don't. We don't need any more of those. But yeah, so you can rotate between Texas, Phoenix, Miami, Vegas, even Martinsville. I know it's a little chilly there in Virginia right in November, but they can do it. So I definitely don't want them to have the same track twice. But what I was saying earlier, about the short tracks and the grassroots, that's why I said New Smyrna and South Boston. Indianapolis Raceway.
South Boston.
Indianapolis Raceway Park would also
Chris
be
Rice
spectacular.
would go nuts if they went to South Boston. The guy would have a heart attack. He'd be going. His family's literally helped run that track for some time. So
how far is that from us, Cody?
South Boston is, I want to say it's like a little bit further than Martinsville. Okay. So about like 3.5 hours from us, I believe.
I know Tony Stewart takes I don't know if it's SRX, but he midget car something goes over there because I remember he was just in Virginia last year racing at that time.
Yeah, SRX was there.
One thing that I brought up in me and Mike's podcast when we talked about the 2023 schedule when it dropped. And Ryan, you actually brought up something very similar in regards to let's get a Pocono back-to-back days, right? A Saturday and a Sunday. I brought up something along the lines of, and NASCAR will probably likely never do it because number one, they hate Saturday night racing. They want everything to be on Sunday. So I know they wouldn't do any sort of midweek racing, but with Richmond, Martinsville, and Bristol basically being like a triangle as far as where they are, let's kind of spice the schedule up. Let's do it where a Saturday night where we're going to Martinsville, and then Wednesday night we're in Richmond, and then the following Sunday we're in Bristol. Knock 3 races out in basically like a 1 week span. I think that would be something pretty cool.
I don't care what anybody says. Awesome. I don't care what nobody says. Night racing, Saturday night racing, I've been able to experience most of my life because that's what Richmond was, and I'm really upset that they took it away. There's nothing like night racing on a Saturday night. It is phenomenal.
Especially
the cars look so good. The cars under the lights, especially now that they're allowed to have the reflective numbers again, they just look spectacular. Now, the reason that the almighty dollar, the ratings suck, and that's why listen, during COVID and they were running a race every 3 days, I was in on those Wednesday night races, but
100%.
But they were getting crap ratings, and that's why they'll never do it.
Well, what's crazy, I don't know if you noticed this, Cody, but I feel like anytime they race on Sundays, at least here at Richmond, it's a lot more packed on Saturday nights than it is on Sundays.
1,000%.
Because I've heard people that literally tell me that have sweet tickets. They won't come to the race because they got to go to church. They have to go grocery shopping. They got to get ready for the week. You know what I mean?
Well, look, here's the thing. So for y'all not very familiar with Richmond's weather it's crazy. Okay. So I believe they came to Richmond in April this year and they came in August, right? April in Richmond, it could either be 50 degrees or it could be 100 degrees. That's just how it is. In August in Richmond, it's going to be 100 degrees. But if it's at nighttime, all right, you're saying you're under the lights at 70, 75 degrees. That's why a lot of people won't come to these day races at Richmond as well, because the heat plays a huge factor into it.
Yeah, you're in the stands just cooking.
Yeah. That's all it is.
So let me ask you guys this. I just lost my train of thought there for a second. Apologies. They've announced that they're going to try to go forward with some rain racing on some of the short tracks, which to be honest, I kind of thought they would have done 10 years ago. For whatever reason, my stupid brain thought Bristol would be one of them, and then I remembered what Bristol is and why the hell would it be Bristol. But Ryan, what were the tracks that they're exploring that at again?
It's only going to be two for next year. It's
Oh,
going to
that'll be
be
sweet.
Martinsville and Phoenix, and they're talking about New Hampshire. They haven't committed to New Hampshire yet.
So basically,
I would
the flatter
assume New
tracks.
Hampshire, the flat tracks, exactly. But I want to be honest with you. I watched that race at the Roval a few years back, and those cars were handling the banking just fine.
Yeah.
You know, I
That's-
mean, it requires
yeah,
a lot of moisture on the track, but they did fine on the oval. So I don't know why they couldn't expand it out to some of the bigger tracks. I think Bristol would be totally cool, but yeah, it's going to be a. I think they're going to, you know, step very gingerly into this, and if it works, then they'll maybe expand on it. But my concern is, you know, I love the rain races, but you know, Coda, you know, was kind of a shit show, and cars were wrecking each other, and ever since then they've been super tentative to even race in the rain on the road courses. So, are they actually going to use the rain tires on an oval? I don't know if they will.
I want to ask one question real quick. Should they get rid of Bristol dirt?
Yes. In my
No.
opinion, yes. Yes.
Go to a
they
real
should.
dirt track.
Boom. That's
Oh
it.
man.
That's it. Take the dirt off of Bristol and go to an Eldora or whatever. Why are
Eldora.
we
Oh
bringing
my
in
god.
all of this freaking dirt to put on the track? We have dirt tracks around. I'm 100% in agreement with you, Sean.
Yeah, drivers complain too that having the dirt on Bristol has ruined the following race too. That's they've said that for the last 2 years, and I have no idea if they're just talking out of their ass because drivers do that. But like if you're that obsessed with having a dirt race, go do it on an actual dirt track where
Yep.
there's a dirt community that can experience that race. Don't do it to Bristol because if there was two other tracks that would want to retain their two races a year that weren't the super speedways, it would be Bristol and Martinsville.
Yep.
Are you guys for the rain tires though? Like I agree with Ryan's point. Like for me, like I don't know why you couldn't make the rain tires work at a Richmond. There's some banking, but it's not extreme.
Yeah.
Like I'm not asking for rain races at Charlotte or Texas or anywhere like that, but I do think you can do this on the short tracks, and it might actually add some entertainment. Like imagine rain at Richmond. Yeah, Mike just mentioned Richmond runs a lot of green flag racing now. That would
That's
certainly
all
add
it is.
some interest to it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's some sort. I mean, as much as technology has advanced, I know that there's some sort of test or something that can be done to where they can figure out what is the maximum banking that these tires can run on. Simple as that.
I
And
don't
as
know
you
about
said,
that.
the Martinsvilles, the Phoenix, the Richmonds, like it can be done, man. I'm for it.
I'm for
Anybody
it
else?
too. I'm for it. I just, man, it's going to be trial and error for sure. I mean, these tires this year have been terrible.
You know what though? We've been hating on NASCAR a lot, rightfully so, on this show with some of their issues. Ryan brought up the Coda race from last year that was a disaster. But I'm going to be honest, the changes they made to this car to make up for it, what's that effect where the water's coming up?
Oh,
Hydroplane.
Wasn't
hydroplaning.
anywhere close to as bad this year with the added flaps on the bottom and some of the other changes they made. It is trial and error, but I do think you can make the product better if you keep working at it.
Yeah. And the other thing that came out with this release, they're adding more lights. They're going to add 2 lights next to the diffuser. They're adding 2 additional lights in the back window where the one usually is. And they've also decided that when the driver is braking, the light will, like a normal brake, brighten up so the drivers behind can see that. So they're adding, I think, the necessary visibility requirements as well to race in the rain that they didn't necessarily have currently, and that'll help tremendously. And we talked about the car. The car is a sports car. It's a sports car in NASCAR clothing. It's basically a giant GT car. If you watch IMSA, these cars can race in the rain. They have enough grip. They're going to have the traction, especially with the rear diffuser, that they're going to be able to get the clearance they need to run in the rain. They're going to need the clearance. The car can handle it. It's just a matter of fine tuning it. And until we knew, I mean, the Roval was basically the first race they raced in the rain in NASCAR. They didn't know until they knew, and they threw it to the wind in about the worst case scenario, and it worked out just fine. So I think they've done enough testing. They've been train tire for 3 years or more, but they brought it to our attention 3 years ago. So I think it's ready.
Last schedule point I'm going to make, and it's going to be incredibly biased, so forgive me. I am the lone Canadian on the panel. Get those fucking cup cars up to Montreal, please. That track is amazing. It's a state-of-the-art racetrack. It is one of the most beautiful places you will ever visit. I know the province had a say in them leaving, but get those cup cars up to Montreal, and you want to see who the real road races are. It is way harder to run that road course than it is Watkins Glen or Sonoma or some of the other road courses. So I'd love to see that. It's not likely to happen, but I would love to see it. So on to our last featured topic of this evening, and then there's some rapid fire. Ryan, you want to talk revenue sharing, man? That's a big thing right now going on.
It is, and we know what we kind of touched on some of the baselines during our charter discussion, so I think we have a good build here. But it's been a big deal. The reason they even brought this new car into the fold outside of the parity was to treat the costs more within tolerance, because NASCAR has gotten out of control, and racing in general is just out of control when it comes to cost. But the drivers in particular, the Race Team Alliance, within a few weeks ago, have really made a public statement, basically, calling out NASCAR that they're keeping too much of the financial piece of the pie, and what can NASCAR do to try to make the sport more appealing, because we have seen an influx of owners, right? Trackhouse 2311 with Michael Jordan, Danny Hamlin, Colleague, they came in under the promise that costs were going to put at a point where they could afford to race. There'd be a new business model that would allow these teams to actually profit, because for as much risk as they put into the sport, Hendrick Motorsports loses money every single season. They don't make money, and that is a bad thing for the future of our sport. So I listened to the Door Bumper Clear podcast last week. I think, Sean, you did as well. And the boys kind of broke down some of the numbers, and it was pretty eye-opening when you looked at some of the revenue sharing. They made, NASCAR makes 93% of all revenue, 7%. I did some math. I love doing math. It's my favorite pastime. It's what I do for work. And so here's the deal. Under the current NASCAR contract, the TV contract, because, oh, by the way, teams don't make any money off licensing. All of their money comes in through the TV contract, and that is through race purse. So that in and of itself needs to change. But the current breakdown is, of the revenue, the TV contract makes $820 million annually under the current contract. All right. The Cup teams make 25%. The racetracks make 65%, and NASCAR pockets 10% yearly. Why the hell are tracks making 65% of 820 million annually? Blows my world. But that aside, if we break that down, the teams make 25%, so that's $205 million a year set aside for a race purse. They race 38 weeks if you include the 2 non-points races. That equates to roughly $5,394,376.84 a week. Of that, 36 race teams that have charters, that would be $149,853.80 per race. The race teams pocket, if everything was even, $150,000. The average cost to run one single cup race is $400,000. It's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable topic. And if the teams don't start getting a bigger piece of the pie, the new TV contract's coming. I guarantee you, if you guys are sports fans, you've seen what's happening in college football with those TV contracts, the year annual contract is going to be over $1 billion a year, guaranteed. And these teams, NASCAR needs to change up in a big way what they're doing. F1 has a 50-50 split, and I think Cup racing needs to be in the same boat. Because you know what? This isn't the 60s. I know the teams tried to unionize back in the day, and Big Bill France said, all right, go away. We don't need you. We're going to get some field fillers to come in and run this race, and we're going to squash you. But you can't do that anymore. If 2025 rolls around and these teams don't feel like they're getting a fair shake and they don't show up to Daytona for the Daytona 500, NASCAR's in trouble.
Ryan, let me ask you a quick question, because the number one, I love you breaking all of that down like that. That was beautiful. What is NASCAR doing with their 65%?
Profit. Pocketing it. So now the one thing about the 65% goes to the tracks. And I will say, if you look at the tracks over the last decade, they have put a lot of money in renovating their tracks. They look really nice. I mean, a lot of huge upgrades. They've modernized the tracks, which I think is wonderful.
Richmond went through a whole remodel as far as like their infield and stuff to be super, super fan friendly. Like they redid all that.
Yeah. And I do look at it as the tracks, they probably do need to be subsidized. I mean, you only get a handful of events a year. They probably wouldn't make money without the handouts.
Man, 65% is a lot.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I might have had the numbers wrong. I'm sorry. Yes, you did say the tracks 65%. I guess what I'm looking at, it was one number. I'm sorry. I think you said 93%.
Yes. So I don't have the complete breakdown on all of where all of the finances come in, right? But the one thing that they do, as I said, the licensing, the agreements, the video games, the commercials, the ad, the Activision that you get on the track at each racetrack. NASCAR pockets all of that profit. None of that.
They're the mafia.
Yeah,
they are.
I don't think they're making very much money off the video games, though. By the way, that's just going to require them to put out something that's actually usable. But 7%. Forgive me for using this term. That's fucking rape. Like, that's disgusting. And you have these teams who have agreed to the charter system. And I'm someone who wants the even playing field. I know we hear Hendrick Motorsports drivers and Joe Gibbs drivers complain about it all the time. But when that's going on, I kind of don't blame them for complaining about it all the time. Like 7% is not enough. You better sweeten the deal more than that. And let me tell you, just paying for the cup parts, the new cup parts that are going to come in the offseason is not enough. It's a start. I don't think 50-50 is realistic. I don't think you're going from 7% to 50-50, but that number better be in the high 20s or low 30s or something if you want to keep getting new blood into the sport and have money going away. I can't believe that 7%.
Yeah, and that's why for the future of the sport, you have to expand on that. And NASCAR counter offer. And again, I'm a huge sports fan outside of racing. If you've ever seen a negotiation unions and the organization, it gets ugly, and I think this is going to get pretty ugly over the next year or so. But this is the first time NASCAR has banded, and by NASCAR I mean the drivers, the teams have banded together, the race team alliance, the charters. We talked about earlier, the charters are 20 million plus right now in value. The reason you don't want that to go down is because that is basically what the teams have as their stake as a franchise. And when you look at a football organization, the Dallas Cowboys, they're worth, what are they worth?
Like $5 billion.
Like $5 billion. Exactly. They're in the billions. Every football.
What was the number you gave? Was it 825 million
per year under the current TV contract?
You take those 36 charters at $20 million a piece, and it doesn't even equal 1 year of that.
Yep. And NASCAR had the audacity to offer an additional $1 million per team in the next contract. I don't blame them for laughing in their face and telling them to kick sand. So,
I would consider myself a diehard NASCAR fan, right? And I've always known that sponsorship was huge in NASCAR to help race teams, get a car out on the track week in and week out. But hearing you break those numbers down like that really paints a clearer picture as to why sponsorship is so big. And that brings me to, if they're able to somehow get it to like a 65-35, or just have that number just rise, do you think that that's going to be something where we see, they're not going to have to lean that much on sponsorship, to the fact that you're not going to have to see cars with 7 different sponsorships every year?
Yeah, wholeheartedly. That's what they're trying. I think what they're trying to get to is to the point where, will you still have prime sponsorship in NASCAR? That's never going away, of course. But you aren't going to. You can sell a season for $5 million. Now I know this is a NASCAR podcast, but I'm a huge IndyCar fan as well, and they run 17 races, so half our schedule. But they run competitively on $6 million in sponsorship. Right, so it can be done. And I got some more numbers for you because I went ham on this. Most competitive franchises, i.e. Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, need at a minimum $15 million a season to run a competitive team, plus driver salary. And I know we had quite a riveting discussion in our chat the other day about driver salary. They are not what they used to be. Most drivers make less than $1 million now. But currently, team sponsorships cover anywhere between 60 and 80% of a team's budget year in and year out. And that isn't the part where you look at Kyle Busch and say, is that man worth 10 million a season? Absolutely. But Joe Gibbs Racing, without a sponsor like M&M's to pay that salary, is going to cut him loose. And here, Ty Gibbs, he's young, but he's going to be a great replacement. He's going to be really good. I don't think that's a step down too much for them. But there's a reason Kyle Busch wasn't re-signed by Joe Gibbs Racing, and that's because they couldn't afford to sign him. And we talk about, for every Kyle Busch out there is, a driver that pays to play. Brandon Jones. I don't want to pick on Brandon Jones too much, but he wouldn't be in NASCAR if he didn't have Menard sponsoring him, right? And if we got to a point where these teams didn't have to rely so much on sponsorship, we could actually start seeing the best drivers on the planet make it to NASCAR, and we wouldn't be having some of these drivers that are there simply because they can write a check.
Teams don't try to hide it anymore either. Like on the Xfinity level, Chris Rice was very upfront once they had Allmendinger and Hemrick signed for this year in Xfinity. They said, yeah, we're going to try to add a third car, but it's going to have to be a pay-to-play guy because their budget was invested into the 2 cars. Before, you never would have caught a team openly admitting that. Like Paul Menard eventually, started to become a better race car driver and was producing better results. But those early years of Paul Menard, Michael Annett, there's other
Brian Scott.
Brian Scott.
You remember him? Yeah, he sucked.
Those guys were all in vehicles that they did not deserve to be in, just flat out. They didn't. I would love to assume that, or I would love to, make the assumption that things are going to change, but there's no guarantee for that. And that's why it's so important. And this is where NASCAR teams can still spend money if they have it, developing a pipeline. Because guess what? The Kyle Bushes, the Kurt Bushes, Kurt Busch is now retired, obviously. But Kyle Busch, even though he's got a big deal with RCR, they're trying to phase out those drivers that make that kind of money so that they can bring in an Alex Bowman, who very likely is not making, a couple $1 million a year to drive that number 48 car. AJ Allmendinger, I believe, makes a shade under $1 million a year. And so, like, for Colleague, that's better than I wouldn't wanted to know what they paid Kyle Busch if he would have went there. But like, you got to develop guys. That's why you've seen a team like Colleague go out and snatch a guy like Chandler Smith from KBM to try to be like, okay, well, Justin's young. We need to develop someone else. There are teams in the Cup Series that still don't have a proper pipeline of drivers. And if they don't start developing it and the sport doesn't change, they're in trouble, and they're going to be in big, big trouble.
I
So
know. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, so when a driver wins a race, who pays them that money? Is it the whoever's sponsoring that race? Like if it's the Auto Parts 400 or who does the track pay that driver? How does that work? I've never known how that worked.
So track sponsorships go straight to NASCAR. The drivers don't see a penny of that. What they do get is the NASCAR takes a purse. Like I broke down the numbers, like 5 million a race, basically. What if you look at Bob Pockrass, he tweets out every single week what the purse is. So it's not always 5. Some weeks it's 7, some weeks it's 8, some weeks it's 4. But NASCAR has a predetermined value of what their purse is going to be, and they have, the winning team makes X dollars and down from there. So if a team wins, they're going to get the race purse plus any contingency sponsors they have within their own organization, but you're not going to see NASCAR giving them anything else of like the Circle K 500.
So like if I Google somebody's salary right now and it says $10.2 million, that I would assume that's including like from the sponsors and everybody else, correct? There's no
Yep.
way a driver's get okay.
Yeah. And then like the weekly payouts, let's say Chase Elliott wins a race. It's probably a bad example because he wins a lot of them and he's on a very rich team. But the team will get X amount of dollars for winning that race. But
Yeah.
Chase Elliott is only going to get a portion of that money, and not a very big portion either. It'll be the team that decides, well, how much does the driver get? Do we give the pit crew any bonuses? How much are we pocketing? It's one of the reasons. Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's one of the reasons why, I don't know if you guys remember this, Smithfield called out Richard Petty Motorsports a few years ago because they were paying them big dollars to be the primary sponsor on Eric Amarola's car. And they knew damn well that Richard Petty Motorsports was pocketing most of that money and not spending very much on the team at all. And that was a popular thing to happen with the mid-pack teams is they'd sign these big sponsorship deals and then the sponsors would find out, well, where's the money going? It's not to the driver, and the car performance isn't improving, and a lot of teams would pocket them and make a profit off of it.
So like, I Googled Chase Elliott's salary, and like in 2019, it said 9.5 million. So that would include, I'm assuming, race winnings, and sponsor. That includes everything, I would assume.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you get they get a base salary. Let's say their base salary is $5 million. And then they, as Sean said, it depends with each contract, right? But let's just safely say the driver gets 25% of the race purse. So they're 5 million base plus 25% of whatever they get for their week's performance. A good example is Ryan Blaney actually talked about it this year. He won the $1 million at the All-Star race. He pocketed 30% of that. They hype it up as like the driver, $1 million to the driver. No, that money goes to the team and the driver pockets a percentage of that. And in Ryan Blaney's case, he got 30%.
AJ called out, I don't know who was doing the reporting, but when he was running the part-time schedule and they were doing the Dash for Cash races and he won like 3 of the 4 or whatever. And like one of the reporters implied, oh, well, you're getting $100,000. And AJ was just like, no, I'm not. The team's getting $100,000 and I'll get a portion of that money. So, but that's another example of the TV broadcast wants you to believe one thing and the truth behind the scenes is much different. Who controls the TV broadcast? NASCAR, not the.
That's wild. Like when the numbers are broken down like that, that is, I mean, it feels like theft, man. I mean, the drivers are the ones putting on the show, right? Like not anybody. Anybody can get behind the wheel of a car, but when we're talking NASCAR going 200 miles an hour, like not everybody can do that. The fans are here to see these drivers. They're not here to hear the broadcast or. Dude, these drivers need to be getting paid much more money, man. And the race teams need to be getting more money than what NASCAR is allowing. So I really do hope that this the new TV deal that's going to be coming, I hope that these teams are able to get a good chunk of that.
Yeah. There is a reason NASCAR and teams don't disclose driver contracts, because if they did, they'd be the laughing stocks of all sports.
Well,
it's an embarrassment.
The problem nowadays is, I said this in our chat the other day, is it's too easy to find that information out. They don't have to disclose it, but someone ends up finding that information out, and it gets out online. That's just the reality of the world we live in now. I thought I read somewhere earlier this year that something like 22 or 23 of the Cup Series drivers make less than $1 million. So, and it's not like they just show up on the weekend, by the way, people, and it's like, okay, it's race time. A lot of these drivers are spending significant amount of time at the shop, helping however they can, being in the simulator, going over notes, and some of them are making $700,000, $600,000, $800,000. By the way, you need to take off your taxes on that still too. So that's not taxes already taken off. So they're criminally underpaid now.
Yeah. In 2008, 20 drivers made 10 million plus a season. That's not the case anymore.
It's a well-known fact that when Junior has talked about it plenty of times, when he was choosing between Gibbs and Hendrick, the offer that Hendrick gave him made his mouth drop. Like I don't even know how big it was.
I mean, Hendrick knew he was going to be able to. I mean, Dale Jr. was a cash cow. We know that. Wow, man.
Yeah. To this day, the most lucrative sponsor contract was Aflac. They paid Carl Edwards and Roush Fenway Racing $26 million a season. It's the highest we've ever seen, and that was in 2010 or so. So
yeah, that wouldn't even have been like 36 races either. That wasn't. I think they were on it for 20, 22.
Well, so, Dale Jr. was talking about it too. I think he was on. It was on Brandon Marshall's, the football player. He has his own podcast, and they did a NASCAR series the past couple of years. And Dale Jr. was on there, and he was just talking about how much money was coming in the early 2000s, how big. Like he specifically brought up diecast back then, and how much that stuff played a factor back then, and how huge that was back then. And he said it was crazy back then compared to now.
Do you have anything else you want to touch on this topic, Ryan, before we get to rapid fire and close things up?
Nope. I think hopefully this information makes it around, because these teams and drivers are woefully underpaid. But let's finish this up.
I guess we should have known that, NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, they all show the full breakdown of player contracts. I guess we should have known, since NASCAR hides everything, something shady was going on.
Oh, for sure. And like today's episode's been a big deep dive into that. Like, if you didn't know the politics going on behind NASCAR now, you have a better idea after listening to this show. All right, let's see where we go. It doesn't have to be rapid fire in terms of you can take more than 10 or 20 seconds to answer and give you reasons why. But first up, how much more time does Alex Bowman have in the 48 before they make a change there? Who's going first?
I would like to start on this one because you cut me off from my statement earlier. I think Alex Bowman's won a lot of races these last few years. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon, but they just hired, and I don't know his name. I apologize for not knowing his name. The crew chief from Michael McDowell. Greg Ives is out, and they just hired the crew chief that's taken Michael McDowell to a playoff contending team this year. Its best season ever. And yes, the new car has a lot to do with that. But if you look at somebody like Cole Pern, a crew chief can make a world of difference. And they're bringing in what I think is a slam dunk crew chief hire for Alex Bowman going into next year. So I think between the two of, it's going to take time for the chemistry to set. But once they get it together, I have high expectations that Alex Bowman is going to win quite a few races and be in the sport a long time.
Yeah, I'm going to say next year's Alex Bowman's last year. I know that's his last year on his contract that we know of right now, after he signed an extension. I believe it was last summer.
Yep, last summer.
I don't know, man. I look at Bowman, he has 7 career wins with Hendrick, and last year, 2021, was the only year where he had multiple wins. Every other year that he's had a win, it's only been one. He goes through spurts where he's showing consistency, and then next thing you know, it's like you're putting his face on a milk carton. You don't know where the guy went. I don't know, man. You look at the stable of what what Hendrick has now with Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson. I mean, Byron has been running very well. I don't know. Something tells me that next year is going to be Bowman's last year, and Hendrick is either going to look to replace him, or maybe they just drop down to 3 cars like Penske.
Did it on this show too. Fucking mute monster. Christopher Bell's a free agent after next year, so maybe watch out for Hendrick. Offering a lot of money that way. I mean, oh man, could you imagine Joe Gibbs loses Kyle Busch 1 year and Christopher Bell the next?
Not
and
a good look.
Truex, his contract is up. Like, he signed an extension for next year, and that's it. So, yeah.
Denny Hamlin's not getting younger either. So
No.
I don't know. Things are looking kind of scary over there at JGR. But no, I agree with Cody. Unless Alex Bowman goes out and wins at least 4 races next year, I think he's out. Like, he's just been kind of a disappointment, if I'm being honest with you. 4. Yeah,
That's
4.
a lot of races.
I know.
I
know it's a lot of races.
Thanks, Alex.
But you got to make a splash. That's like, I feel like he is on the edge. Like, I am 100% with Cody, and I'm just thinking of the ways that he could possibly be on the team next year, or the after next year, and he has to make a splash, and it's going to be like that. And if it's based off what we've seen in the past, that's just not going to happen for him. So I think next year is going to be his last year. He's not old by any means, but he's not super, super young by any means either. I think that Hendrick could look to bring in a really, really young racer. And you talking about having young talent on that Hendrick team. I mean, I think they're going to go all young. They're going to be no veterans in a say. I mean, you got 2 champions on there, but you know what I mean? Age-wise, I think they're going to bring in somebody younger and more talented.
Who is that, though? I don't think outside of Chris Bell. And if JGR lets Chris Bell walk, stick a fork in him. Besides Chris Bell, who are you going to put in that car that's going to be as competitive?
Well, I can think of a guy that's doing pretty good in Xfinity right now, and I believe his deal with Petty GMS is only 1 year. So if Noah Gragson becomes available and makes some noise in that 42, I would not rule him out.
I mean, he's been racing in the 48 the past couple weeks.
I would not rule that possibility out. That said,
that's a good one.
That said, don't take this personally. I think you guys are fucking nuts. Four wins in a more competitive field than ever, in a more competitive car than ever. Isn't there only one driver this year that has more than that, or 4 or more?
2 now. Logano has 3. He got his 3rd this weekend, and Elliott has 4 or 5. Right. So
4.
Outside of that,
he backed into 1.
Yeah, I don't.
Technically 5. Technically,
I don't know if you can ask that of any driver. Like,
2. I think 2 would be fine.
I think Kyle Larson's probably the most badass driver on the planet. Yeah. And I think if he's competitive and he's finishing in the top 5 and he can win a race or 2, but consistent. If you can go,
I just don't like the guy, honestly.
I think I'm with you on that one, Sean. It's like 4 wins, maybe not, but you get a couple wins in dominating fashion, I should say, because let's be honest, the 4 wins that he had last year,
Kyle Busch
kind of backed into a few of them. Call him a hack? But you get a couple wins next year, you consistently race in the top 10, and maybe you're able to make it into the round of 8. All right, maybe you have a shot. I just don't see Alex Bowman being able to do that next year. That's just me.
Well, again, I think the new crew chief is going to be the make or break situation. Like if they come in and consistency is the key, especially with this new competitive car. I think if you get 2 wins, you've had a great season. And if you can make, obviously playoffs is the expectation at Hendricks, but you make the round of 12, make the round of 8 would be exceptional. I personally think he's probably all right, and we haven't talked about this. What does Ally want to do? Right. At the end of the day, Ally writes the check. So if Ally is happy with Bowman, then Bowman's going to stay.
I want to add this real quick, because you brought up Noah Gragson. Something tells me that, if that is a 1-year deal with Petty GMS and you see Mr. Dale Jr. himself bring in Junior Motorsports in 2024, I think that would just make the most sense. Noah Gragson ends up being that first-time driver for Junior Motorsports in the Cup Series.
I also think Petty GMS is one of those teams. It's this is me just throwing this out there. I haven't heard this anywhere. That other teams can look at and go, you know what? We want to buy a team. We want to buy their charters. We want to buy everything they have. They're one of those teams that I think can be bought by another team, or brought. They're already a part of the RCR fold, I believe. So you got them, you got Colleague, you got RCR, all sort of in the same little circle. I think Trackhouse is split. Trackhouse, I believe, gets their engines from
Hendrick.
RCR, but the chat. I could have swore the other day when Suarez was on pit road that they had an ECR guy looking at their engine. I think their engines are RCR, and that the chassis is Hendrick. I think it's a split with them.
Yeah, they might have changed it because I know when Chip Ganassi was in, I mean, he was getting his chassis and engines from Hendrick. So maybe they split it off when Trackhouse ended up acquiring it.
But I will. The other thing too. Oh shoot! Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I'll pass this.
It is as of June 30th, 2021, when they bought the team. It is a collaboration between Hendrick and Richard Childers Racing with that team. So maybe Colleague wants to go knock on that door. We'll take some Hendrick chassis.
I just want Hendrick power. If you give me a Hendrick engine, they're off to the races. But I want to say just quickly on Petty GMS, I don't think they're for sale because GMS just bought into it and they've been trying to go cup racing for a while. Eric Jones, if I this isn't the old point system, but if you look at the old point system, Eric Jones would be 12th in points this season. He's had a very, very good season. So if you want to look at a team, similar to Colleague or Trackhouse, I know Ty Dillon's, it's Ty Dillon and he sucks. But Eric Jones has been very competitive for Petty GMS this year.
Which is nice because I think when the 43 car is competitive on the track, which has not been very often, it's better for the sport. It brings back some of the nostalgia. Let's keep moving on here, though, guys. The next question, I can't read because they're so small, is this one. Nope, we just did that one. It's this one. Is Ty Gibbs mature enough for Cup? I'm going to go first here and say absolutely not. As somebody that watches Xfinity every week for the last 2 years, this kid is like, if we're going to get on other people for not being mature enough and making stupid decisions, then Ty Gibbs is all the way up there, number one on that list. You will not find a more hypocritical and entitled person in this sport than Ty Gibbs. That doesn't mean he's not talented. He also has got power under the hood. But I've seen him done, not to mention, I don't think he's mature enough. What has he done in the Cup Series outside of 2 okay races? His strong suit is road courses, and he's been invisible on all of them that he's done this year. I'm not saying he's not the future of that team because he probably is. But, man, if you can find a 1-year stopgap and make him, sort of earn his stripes a little bit more, I'd be doing that if I were them because this guy pisses a lot of people off.
I mean, you can't say either that he didn't have the equipment when he was filling in for Kurt Busch because Bubba got in and won in that 45 once he took over that. So that's not the case. And again, it goes back to if you're saying is Ty Gibbs, we're not questioning his talent, but again, he is very immature. I don't know how that will translate over to the Cup Series. If he comes over here like really, really soon, full time, I could see him being a clone of the Busch brothers when they first came in. Whether that's good for NASCAR or not, I'll leave that up for interpretation. I mean, it'll leave boneheaded decisions again. Like Ty Gibbs has made really boneheaded decisions, and again, NASCAR doesn't do anything really much about him as far as that. But whatever. Again, that we already went through that. But I would say, I guess it all depends if you think it's good for the sport or not.
I think one of the other problems are, and I'll challenge you guys to come up with this, is even though I don't think he's mature enough, who's the other option?
John Hunter Nemechek.
That's no better.
Yeah,
you can't keep an Xfinity car on the track, let alone a NASCAR car.
Here's the thing: Ty Gibbs is what, 19 years old? I believe
just turned 20.
Just turned 20. I heard Door Bumper Clear say something similar to what I'm about to say, and bro, I mean, you're 20, your grandpa runs one of the best teams in NASCAR. I'm pretty sure at 20, if my grandpa was running something very big that I was about to be a part of, I'm pretty sure I'd be very immature too. I kind of feel invincible, like nobody can touch me. And I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, is he mature now? No. Will he be mature or get mature? Hopefully. But I mean, is Kyle Busch mature yet? You know what I'm saying? So
His brother though, shout out to Kurt, man. That man just flipped a switch and was like,
yeah, for sure.
Turned a corner.
We're still waiting for Kyle to get there. But I will say this. I'm 99% sure Ty is going to be in one of the cars in the 18 next year for JGR. And I just hope JGR, which I'm pretty sure they will since it's his grandson, I hope they have a little more patience with him because I can see him coming into the Cup Series running full time and it being something similar to how Joey Logano came into the Cup Series for JGR back in, I think it was like 2008, 2009. You know, he didn't necessarily have the success right away. Obviously, they ended up moving on from him. He goes to another team and now, 2 championships later, I believe. I just think it's going to be some growing pains for Ty. He'll mature eventually. I just hope JGR is able to be patient with him because I do think he's going to be very good in the Cup Series.
I mean, I do miss the fist fights. So man, I remember back in the day, you used to get them all the time. People throwing helmets at cars. We don't get too much of that. And I mean, even this past weekend, it was just a pushing match or just one person pushing somebody. Nobody's really throwing haymakers anymore. So maybe Ty Gibbs will bring his haymakers from the Xfinity to the Cup.
He's just going to do it with his helmet on because he doesn't have the gonads to fight somebody straight up.
He's done that twice.
You're not wrong.
Well, I agree though. Like, let's be immature. He's going to have a rude awakening. We've seen it this year. He's basically been a 30th place driver in points in his time in the series. Some of that's bad luck. I think he'll probably be better than that next year, but I don't think he'll make the playoffs next year. He's not at that point in his career yet. And as somebody that just turned 20, he doesn't have the reps, right? He doesn't have the experience behind the wheel to run competitively week in and week out. I think Joey Logano was a great reference because Joey made his Cup debut at 18 as well. So you have to give them a couple years. And truthfully, look at all of the young drivers coming into the sport. I mean, it's taken William Byron 3-4 years. It took Chase Elliott 3 years to get his first win. C. Bell is finally coming into his own this year, and this is like year 4 for him. So Eric Jones, same deal. He's finally made, so it's taken him 5-6 years to figure it out. So when you look at all these young drivers, the sport is really tough. These are the best of the best, and it is going to take some time. And now, you talk about Ty Gibbs and driving for daddy's or granddaddy's race team, and I'd be cocky too if I was spoiled and rich and had the best of the best. And the thing that it's not an excuse for him by any stretch of the imagination, but if you look at his trajectory, his career, how fast tracked he's been, he hasn't been in a racing series for more than a season at a time. I mean, he did late models, ARCA 1 year, Xfinity a year and a half, Cup. He skipped over the trucks. So, he hasn't raced with the same group of racers for any length of time. And when you know the same group of drivers week in, week out, year in, year out, you kind of get a point where like, oh, I can fuck with him. I can put him into the wall and it's me because I'm going to be up a series and this I'm in my rear view mirror. He's going to have a wake-up call at the Cup Series because these guys aren't going to tolerate his nonsense, but he's going to have to learn to race with these guys. And we've already seen it this year that he's built a reputation that he's going to have to dig himself out of, and it's going to take some time, but it can be done. Kevin Harvick, Tony Stewart, the Busch brothers, Logano, even to an extent. These guys have attitude problems when they're young, and as they get older and race in the series for a decade, they work themselves out of it, and Ty Gibbs won't be any different.
I don't want to take away from like the kid's talent because obviously he has some talent, but the one thing that the Cup Series has now that Xfinity doesn't, that ARCA doesn't, is the Cup Series cars are way more even playing field. You go to Charlotte, the Oval, and Michael McDowell is running just off of Joey Logano. That's just how it is. Ty Gibbs has far and away the highest funded and best equipment in Xfinity, bar none. Not the other Gibbs drivers, Ty Gibbs. Not even the junior motorsports cars produce the speed that Ty Gibbs does. So it covers some of those mistakes. We've seen it time and time again. He doesn't have that cushion in the Cup Series now. I'm not saying he can't do much, but let me ask Mike and Cody this because I know Ryan and I'll have a biased answer. Who's been more impressive this year in the Cup Series? Who has produced better results? Ty Gibbs or Justin Haley?
Justin Haley for sure.
And I know people
Yeah,
say
I mean, that's
Justin
pretty.
Haley has a Cup win on a rain out race, garbage team, no equipment. He's been in one of those. He's been in a Spire car. It's
Ty Gibbs is in really
But
good equipment too, as well. Again,
but like, and I mean, very true. Look, he is in better equipment, running in that 23. But let me ask you this: how much do you think? Like, let me see. How can I put it? Obviously, and AJ Allmendinger does it too, with him running Xfinity full time and then running, a part time Cup schedule. How much do you think Ty will grow when he's actually just in Cup full time, where he can start to really understand the car instead of going back and forth, back and forth? Because you would have to think that has to play with you, right? Like these two cars, the Xfinity car and the Cup car, they're not the same. So like whatever information you have in the Xfinity car, you can't bring it over to the Cup car. So I just wonder how much better will Ty be in the Cup Series once he's able to get rid of the Xfinity Series and just focus on that car now.
I think it's a valid point. I don't know how much it speaks for his Cup results, but when you look at the Xfinity results, and Ryan watches every race too in Xfinity, his first half of the season, dynamite. Since he's been in that Cup car, it's been noticeable. Like the car's still producing the power, but he is not producing the results that he did early on.
Yeah. And I truly think I'm going to take the opposite opinion on this, that the Xfinity car is harder to drive, right? So when it comes to a point of view, him driving the Xfinity car will make him a better race car driver. Going to the Cup Series, I mean, obviously that car has got a lot of mechanics, that are very different. It's easy to spin those cars out, but at the same token, they've got a ton of grip. So maybe being able to focus on just the Cup car will help him, improve his craft. But from a straight racecraft perspective, I think he's actually losing something by not racing the Xfinity car.
All right, we'll move on here, guys. I'm going to throw this one over to Mike first. Mike, how will Tyler Reddick do in year one, specifically just the first year at 2311?
I think he gets 2 wins. And I can
Whoa,
see
whoa,
maybe.
whoa. Bowman 4 wins, Reddick 2. I think you're backwards here, sir.
No, I said if Bowman wants a chance to stay at Hendrick, if he wants that opportunity because he has not earned it. I don't like that guy. I'm sorry. He puts a very big stain, in my opinion, on the team. Anyways, I mean, come on. I mean, let's be honest. Look at. I've just been super impressed with Tyler Reddick this year at RCR. Obviously, does really, really well on road course tracks, but does really, really well on all the other tracks as well. And, I picked him to go to the championship round, and unfortunately, he had a really bad. I know he had a really bad race, and I think the next race he won, I believe, or the race after that. So, I think he's going to go over to 2311 and do really good. I think he's going to make the playoffs. I think it'll be another year again where both cars that are over there gets wins. I don't know if Bubba makes the playoffs next year. That would be his next step to, progressing as a driver is to make the playoffs. But I do have confidence that I do think Tyler Reddick gets 2 wins next year and makes the playoffs.
Cody?
Yeah, I think Mike is low on those wins. Tyler has 3 this year. I'm just Tyler has 3
Four's
this
too
year.
high, but
I mean, yeah, 4 is too high for Bowman.
well, everybody
no.
seems to love Bowman on this panel.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
So
makes no sense.
Reddick has 3 wins this year. He has 10 top 5s, 15 top 10s, and he sat on the pole 3 times. We know 2311. We've said it earlier on in the show that they're in an alliance with JGR. So, I mean, they're basically getting the same equipment. We know JGR's equipment is much better than RCR's. I mean, on paper, it looks like Tyler Reddick should probably get. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Tyler's going to get 4 wins next year. Okay. There it is, Mike. He's getting 4 next year. And I really want to put him in that championship 4. I really do. But we just know how these playoffs are. So I'm going to put it to you this way. Tyler Reddick gets 4 wins. He makes it to the round of 8. I just can't put him in the championship 4 just yet.
Ryan?
If we are projecting out careers, I think Tyler Reddick is going to be the most dominant driver in NASCAR over the next 10 to 15 years. I think he will be the very best. I think he's going to win multiple championships, at least 2, maybe more, but we know how hard it is to win championships. But next year, I think something that needs to be considered is the relationship that Tyler Reddick has had with his crew chief, Randall Burnett. When he was at Junior Motorsports, that was his crew chief. They won the Xfinity title. Last year, he was okay, but nothing spectacular. They bring in Randall Burnett to be his crew chief, and he has taken off. You said the stats, his best year by a large margin, and he's again year 3 at the Cup level. He's figuring it out, but Randall Burnett is staying with that 8 car and Kyle Busch next year. So I think there's going to be a learning curve with whoever, Chevy to Toyota. While the cars are the same, they're not the same. It's going to take him time to learn the car. He's going to have to learn a new crew chief. I think they will struggle a little bit. And by a little bit, I still think he wins at least 2 races because he's just that talented. I think the 2311 equipment is at that point now where it's going to be competitive week in and week out. His talent will take over. He's going to win races, but I think he's going to struggle at the start of the year next year. He'll make the playoffs, but I also don't think he'll make the final 4 next year. But again, going forward, he's going to be a perennial championship favorite.
So I'm glad someone brought it up. When you change your crew chief and you've had a relationship with the one that is working for a while, it's a big change. But then you're going into a new team environment. You're not going to the same race shop. Your family life changes. Your personal life changes. You are like Toyotas drive differently than Fords, and they drive differently than Chevys. That's just how these cars are. You don't hop in from one to the other, and it's the exact same. It's not. They're close, but it's not. I'm going to say I would not say he wouldn't make the playoffs, but I'm going to say I don't think there's a chance he wins 4 races, and I think he's going to fight for his playoff life if he doesn't win early or take advantage on a road course. And that's not to say he's not projecting bad, because I actually agree with you, Ryan. I think he's going to be one of the most dominant drivers in NASCAR for years to come. I just hope that they're patient with it, because the guy deserves time to get used to a new team, the same way the team deserves time to get used to the driver. We talk about this as colleague all the time, man, weekly. Just because you hand Landon Castle or Daniel Hemrick AJ Allmendinger's road course car does not mean that they can go out and do what AJ Allmendinger does on a road course. And if you want to go just for ovals, because there's way more of them, the way that Chase Elliott sets up his car and what he's comfortable with is not always the same as what Kyle Larson's comfortable with. There's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be a question of how quickly they can get over that learning curve and take off. I would not be shocked if Tyler Reddick's season this year is better than his season next year. And I don't think that's anything to be disheartened about. If you're a 2311 fan, you just went out and got, arguably in terms of long-term value, maybe the hottest free agent that we've had in a long, long time. No arguments?
Perfect.
All right.
Perfectly said.
All right. 2 more here. Will AJ Allmendinger make the playoffs? I heard you guys talking about it, but if he makes the playoffs, well, one, will he? But if he does he do it by winning a race or pointing in, Mike?
I think he wins. Your favorite stat, one of the best road course drivers out there. But debatable. No, but no, in all seriousness, I'm not going to sit there and argue on that. That's hard to argue against. He wins his way in, man. I mean, look, we've seen him, even on ovals be really, really race really good this year, and I think having a full year in the Cup Series next year, he's going to be able to compete on every road course. Like that's not even a question. Like there's drivers that struggle at certain tracks. So AJ is going to be no different. There's going to be tracks that he struggles at, but at least every road course he goes to, I know that he is going to be competitive. And there's only a couple people that you can say that about at any track, period. So I think that is a really, really big compliment for him. But not only do I think that he has a really good shot, obviously winning on the road course, but I give him a really, really good shot at winning on an oval track as well. You know what I mean? So I think that he gets in based on a win.
Cody?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I believe 5 of the 6 road course races next year will be before the playoffs start. And again, like Mike said, I know it's not a stat that you like to hear because we know AJ Allmendinger he's good on oval tracks as well, but his bread and butter are road courses. I think that he's going to be able to win 1 or 2 races on the road course and even an oval. And this is before the playoffs start. I know, it might sound like I'm being, overly high on AJ Allmendinger, but I just know how good he is, what he's shown this year on a part-time schedule, and just knowing him being able to be in this new gen car full-time next year is only going to make him better in this car, obviously. So yes, I think that he doesn't point to himself in there. He wins 2 to 3 races before the playoffs even start and gives him a very good cushion going into the playoffs with those playoff points. And I think in our podcast that we did Monday that we had a similar topic, and I think I said that AJ Allmendinger would make it to the round of 8 as well.
I'm going to jump ahead of Ryan here and let him close it up. I think he points in. It's not that I don't think he can win a road course. He has 16 starts if you include the All-Star race, the 9th highest average finish among all Cup Series drivers this year, and only 6 of those 16 races are on a road course. It's just hard to win on a road course, and when he goes to a place like Watkins Glen, when you're going up the S's, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson are going to have an advantage there. He did everything he could to try to. Who was he running down at that race? It was one of the two. I think it was Kyle Larson. Was it Kyle Larson that won the Glen?
Larson. It was Larson.
Yeah, and I know how good AJ is, and you could see where he was catching Larson on the track, but as soon as they got to going uphill, there was nothing. Like he had nothing. And until Colleague finds a way to improve their engine program, which comes from RCR, he's always going to lack a little bit there. Same thing with the Roval. He was better than everybody on the technical part of the racetrack, but once you got to the front stretch and the back stretch, he was 7th or 8th just because of the lack of horsepower. They don't generate the same amount of horsepower. I will say this. They're going to go to a track next year that nobody has any idea what it's going to run like, and that is advantage AJ Allmendinger, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Austin Cindric. Specifically, AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric, I will not be surprised if they dominate that weekend because they are the 2 guys that have run street courses before. Street course is not like a road course. It's not like a roval. They are extremely tight. And so that track, I think he has a chance to make some noise on, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes second 3 times at a road course and a couple of top 5s, or if there's a power steering issue or a heating issue like they had. It's hard to win races in this series if you're not going to be driving for one of the big teams. I just think that I don't believe there'll be 16 different winners going into the chase. And I think that they've shown they can be consistent enough to point in. Obviously, I want to cheer on some AJ Allmendinger wins in the Cup Series. That'd be great. I just think it's more realistic he points in.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I at the end of the day, I think he wins a race next year. I don't know which one it is. But I do think he'll get one win next year. And just for everything you said, Sean, I mean, we saw it this year. I mean, Coda, running second all day long. Watkins Glen ran second all day long. Roval ran second all day long. I see a trend, in a Colic car. He can wheel it to second place with his equipment. And besides that, he's kind of at a disadvantage because, I mean, this is, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott. These guys are also elite road racers. Is AJ better? Yes. But the gap is much narrower to these guys than it is in the Xfinity series. And hell, we even saw it with Austin Cindric and Chase Briscoe. Those two guys are talented as well. And in the Xfinity series and lesser equipment, he had a hard time winning. So I think it's going to be very hard, but the stars will align at some point and he will get his win. Hopefully it's before the playoffs start and he gets in that way. But even if it doesn't, I agree with Sean. I think he's going to point his way in. His consistency up until this last week where they had a disastrous final pit stop. He hadn't finished lower than 16th all season in the Xfinity series. Obviously, that doesn't fully translate to Cup, but I do think what he's learned as he's gotten older and running the Xfinity series full time is you don't have to win every week. He put so much pressure on himself to win when he got to the road courses with JGR and Penske that he kind of caused him his own mistakes. And going into next year, I don't feel like that pressure is on him. He's going to be able to feel confident in saying that, he doesn't need to win today. If he's got a 7th place car, take 7th place and that's fine. Go on to the next one. And if you do that, week over week over week, you're going to get yourself into the playoffs. And I also just want to say, the Xfinity series has been the best thing for him because it's allowed him to race up front. But he never had an opportunity. He got put into a really crap situation at Red Bull from day one and he never got out of it. The Xfinity series these last few years has allowed him to race consistently in the top 5 with the best drivers in that series. And that racecraft is something that he has, I believe, learned and taken that he's going to be able to now take to ovals on a more consistent basis at the Cup series. And he could sneak up and win a oval race. I mean, we talk about Martinsville all the time. He's very good at Martinsville. I mean, he won Michigan in the Xfinity series. I think he could potentially win there, but there's so many open ends there. But at the end of the day, to answer the question, in playoffs, and I think he gets one win doing it.
Nice. Awesome stuff. By the way, just to correct you, he was the best car at Coda. Statistically speaking, he had the fastest car on the track. That's the difference between having a team with a good strategy and a team with a dog shit strategy that cost your driver any chance at winning the race. Like, I watched Chase Elliott pit. I'm like, oh, that son of a bitch is going to come out first. And then they kept running. I'm like, why aren't you going down pit road? And of course, how did it cycle out? They cycled out behind Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick. Kudos to that's the difference between driving for an experienced race team and driving for a new one. Hendrick Motorsports knew exactly what they were doing there, and kudos to them. I know neither one of them ended up winning, but kudos to them for coming out there. Fitting final question here, because the season will be over the next time we do this. Who wins the championship, fellas? I'm going to reverse order this. Ryan, lead us off, man.
Joey Logano. I think Joey Logano, I mean, recency bias aside, obviously he just won this weekend at Las Vegas. But if you look at his season stats, I think it's a fair thing for me to say that this has been his best season as a NASCAR driver. He has been consistently at the front of the field, 3 wins, a bunch of top 5s, a bunch of top 10s. He's decent at Phoenix. Not probably the best driver, but I just feel like this year and all the calamity and all of the craziness, he hasn't pissed anybody off. He hasn't done he hasn't stepped a foot wrong all year long. And when it comes to winning the final race, or hell, you don't even need to win. I think this is the first year that the champion doesn't win the race just because it's so competitive. just having the right strategy all day long is going to give him the advantage. And I think he's going to this if he only has one championship. I think this will be his second.
I'm going Chase Elliott because he's going to have to screw up really big to not be in that Final Four. And I look at the competition around, and Danny Hamlin has found a way to not get it done every year, and there's no reason why I shouldn't think that. And I'd love it to be Ryan Blaney. That would be my favorite pick to go for. I'm just not sure he's even going to make it to the Final Four. So I'm going with Chase Elliott as a champion. Cody?
Yeah, I'm going with Joey Logano. Picked him before the playoffs started, and I'm going to stick with him. Obviously getting that win at Vegas last week was huge. Went ahead and got himself clinched into that championship 4. And I got to agree with you, Ryan. He's just been so consistent this year. I have to agree with you in regards to this might be one of his best seasons ever in his career. And you brought up him at Phoenix. Actually, looking at it right now, as far as active drivers go over the past, I believe it's the last 6 Phoenix races. So this is also including the race in I guess March it is. He is actually second amongst active drivers with an average finish of 6.3. Only Kevin Harvick is better than him at 6.1. So he's already clinched. He's in that championship 4. I think he's able to take care of business at Phoenix and bring home that championship.
Who else would I pick? Chase Elliott. And honestly, if I had to be honest with you, a lot of that has to do with that's who my pick was going into the playoffs. He was really, really hot going into the playoffs. Obviously, most wins. Felt very, very confident in that pick. And then the playoffs just didn't. First round, wrecked that first race. Second round, troubles in that first race. And then last week, ran 20th the entire race, and we're going to kind of a similar type track. And I honestly feel like I'm really worried here. But one thing that I am very confident in, I'm very confident in Chase Elliott running really, really well at Martinsville to advance to that Final Four. And obviously, from past history, I'm very confident in Chase Elliott at Phoenix. I would say his biggest competition is definitely Joey Logano. I like everything that Joey Logano has done this year, but I have to go with my, pre-playoff pick with Chase Elliott. If he can have a good, solid race this weekend, I feel very, very, very confident in my pick. I just got to get past this weekend.
Well, that's going to do it, guys. 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 3 seconds into this thing. We'll be doing the crossover once a month. We're trying to do it. There's always a variety of NASCAR issues to tackle. 3, hopefully, really good races left to go in this season. Homestead, Martinsville is always fun, although let's hope the tire is better than it was in the spring. And then Phoenix. It's going to be interesting to see how this wraps up. Appreciate all you fellas spending your night here this evening. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast diving into all these topics. And Mike, Cody, where can everybody find you at, man? What do you guys got going on?
Now, you got it.
Yeah, you could follow us at 4 Wide Podcast on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are live every Monday on Facebook Live, 7:30 p.m.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, definitely check them out. I love the show that those guys put on. Man, I tell you what, Cody and Ryan love to tackle numbers. I'm not going to want to math for like another month now. So, Ryan, what do you got going on, man? Or what do we got going on?
Well, I tell you, we got our weekly trophy hunting podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on all of the podcast sites, Apple Podcasts and such. You can also find us on Twitter, Colleague Racing Pod, or my Twitter handle, Yacht Racing 45. I talk a lot of NASCAR on our socials, so keep in touch with us, and we'll give you the information you're looking for.
Awesome, fellas. Well, it was a fun tonight. Thanks to those that came out in the chat for a bit and hung out with us. We'll see you next time on the crossover move. Let's see who the champion ends up being. Have a great weekend.